Buster the Bear case.
Okay, this is live now.
It's on, is
Yeah.
the volume on as well?
So I can see.
Volume is on, like, sound is on?
Strange, man. Who's this?
Not my spot.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I've seen you for so long, you drove beer trying to.
I know, I'm just realizing, it's mask free, aren't we right
Hands
now?
on the bottom.
I know.
It's like awkward.
Okay, this feels weird. I feel a little naked and vulnerable.
It feels weird. Just so everybody knows the camera's on as well as the volume is on or the sound.
Oh, wonderful. I don't know how we feel about beards. Heather.
Snippy, what you look like. That's what I look like. So you just said.
So grab a cup of coffee here.
Thanks for sending that, Scott.
Does that help you out?
Yeah.
Okay, awesome.
Actually,
Yeah, because I was sitting there thinking, I'm like, I do it for myself, so I don't forget things. But just for you, then you don't have to worry about trying that.
yeah, and sometimes with all the, when it's like sometimes they say the name of the meeting and it's like.
Yeah, then with these, it's kind of hard to hear too, right?
No, that's really good.
Yeah, I'll just keep doing that, that works.
Sure, that's great.
Awesome.
I appreciate that.
Yeah.
Then I don't have to beg you.
Yeah.
Forget for this. It's been a while,
You're here?
Yeah. Okay, but like, what about like this part though?
Yeah.
You guys remember what that is?
Oof. I think I know.
Do you still have your paper from moving better stuff?
It's not my house.
Okay.
I think it's UX.
I can't even remember what it is now. I thought I had a sticky note on here, which is very secure.
Do you have a flash drive or anything like that?
Might be in my class or something.
Not here, because I can't use them on my Mac, right? So I don't really carry. That's okay. I did bring my other computer for fear this would happen. Just trying to be all fancy here. I'm trying to think.
So everybody ready for the snow tomorrow?
Is it supposed to snow? Oh man, like a lot?
Like 10 centimeters.
Oh.
Yeah, I think, right, isn't it? I'm pretty sure.
Oh
I don't know,
no.
that's not what was on my phone.
No? Oh,
Could be
okay, bring it on.
Really?
Well, in this time period, so we don't get a drought and.
No, that's true. I just like I went back to campus today, like for the first time,
Oh, yeah.
and I'm like, I don't want to have to walk through that.
Good, how are you?
Nice mug,
What's that?
nice mug. I can see what it says.
What does it
Oh, I
say?
run this town.
Oh, I didn't even read it before I grabbed it. It was a subconscious state.
I see how it is.
I have to say, that's never something that I really thought much of, trying to run this down.
Just make sure the words are facing yourself.
It's a bit sort of like a, you know, that whole sheriff of one horse town kind of thing. Has anybody read any of Ian McCormick's book?
Yeah, I did.
There's some great stuff in there, isn't there? It's really good.
I like it's an easy read too.
Yeah.
The way it's written.
Yeah. Yeah, it's a really great examples to start to follow.
I don't think this chair actually goes up. Are these new chairs?
No, they're just, like, sometimes I feel kind of low, or this is high.
Yeah.
Well, they're new, but the whole thing.
Yeah.
Did you mean new since last time, or new since like?
No,
Very
this
nice.
is before. And you saw the chair I sat in for 12 years. Because I'm an assertive sitter, so the whole front end was kind of bowed down a bit. There was a lot in it. I think there's marks left over when Lauren sat in it prior to me. Yeah, so everybody left their mark on that chair.
We have some of those chairs at work too, we were actually going through today. Hello, how are you? You're what?
I'm good, how are you?
Good.
Charcuterie boards. Now that Jesse's here, I've been politely waiting for him to arrive before you
I
start telling us how you do it, okay?
You have to wait till next month, guys.
I got really fancy.
Have you?
Yeah, it's got like a blue swirl of resin through.
Well, I thought,
Oh, I've got the board.
Yeah, you saw it, yeah.
I see this.
I've got
Oh, you got the board.
Board, I'm talking about
Toppings. We'll
putting
start,
things together
start,
on the
start with the board, right?
Start with the board. That was step number one.
Baby steps.
baby steps, yeah. Get a nice board and find somebody who knows what they're doing.
It's kind of weird that Stan's not here. So used to seeing him sitting there.
Figures the sound is working now.
Yeah, he's like, oh, I'm good. Stan, if you're there, hello.
So we're gonna be a few more minutes of wearing masks at work, which is why I haven't been out in the world yet without one on.
Yeah, we're still wearing them at the university too until the end of the semester.
Oh, you're in the university?
Today's my first day back. What? Yeah. Well, I'm not teaching this semester, so I'm not on strike.
Okay.
So I'm good.
Oh,
I'm doing my like other job. So, yes. Okay. We have 2 minutes.
Plus there's the delegations, right? So
Yeah.
you gotta be here in person.
Supposed to be, I talked to him 4 o'clock-ish, so.
Okay.
Okay, fine, we'll call the meeting to order. Okay, so we'll call the meeting to order at 6:59. And just get started with. So I'm gonna read our land acknowledgement. The town of Colhurst is located in traditional Blackfoot Confederacy territory. We honor the Blackfoot people and their traditional ways of knowing and caring for this land, as well as all Indigenous peoples who have helped shape and continue to strengthen our community. All right, so let's just get going here. We'll start out with the adoption of the previous meeting minutes. Would someone like to make a motion to adopt the minutes as presented? Councilor Ackermans?
Yeah.
Any discussion? All in favor? That's carried, thank you. And then let's go on to the adoption of the agenda. Does anyone have any additions that they would like to add? All right, can I get a motion to adopt the agenda? Great, thank you. Deputy Caldwell? Hello? And any other discussion on that item? All in favor? Great, that's carried. And welcome.
Oh.
We're so excited to have you. So we're going to be moving on to our first delegation. So this is our interim fire chief, Mitch Sorsdahl. Did I say your last name right?
You did.
Perfect. So you're here to talk to us today about the Joint Chiefs Committee Terms of Reference.
Yes.
Perfect. All right, well, the floor is yours.
Don't know if you guys have all had a chance to read the terms of reference. It's a project that's been in the works for one form or another over the last few years, and it's finally come together where we've got to a point where terms of reference are brought to all the individual councils for basically approval so that we can officially become our organization. Simply put, the Joint Chiefs is pretty much something we've always been doing already as departments. So the Joint Chiefs makes up the 5 county departments and the County Emergency Services Coordinator, and we just get together 4 times a year at least with our minutes there, and it's just for us to share information. So if I'm just trying to think, we've got quite a few different projects on the go right now. The biggest one they have right now that they're working on is the RMS system. So the records management system that we use for entering our fire call information in is with the city with FDM. That's run and it's at its end of life. The city's switching over to a new program, and the county departments are looking at going our own way with another program that will suit us better than just Lethbridge's system. So that's kind of a committee that we've got together out there searching to see what's out there. So that would be one of the examples of what we have going on, I guess. But it's just a committee so that we get together, share information, training opportunities, purchase opportunities. It's just a more formal way of putting together what we've always been doing in the past anyways. That's the easiest explanation. I don't know how to really put it any simpler than that. So what we're looking for now is just basically town council's approval on the minutes. I say in the minutes, it's fairly general. If you look at the terms of reference, the town is never committed to doing anything, so nothing ever gets past the JCC unless it's a joint or it's a unanimous decision. So all 5 county departments and the county have to agree on before we ever put anything forward to our individual council. So it's in basically everybody's best interest. And then even if we do put forward a motion or a suggestion out of the JCC, the town is by no means obligated to basically go with it if they decide to go a different way later on. So it's just a more formalization of the cooperation throughout the county that we've had going on for quite a few years. So.
Can I ask you
Go
a
ahead.
question? So can I just ask you, yeah, I read through it and it looks great, but was there anything that you felt should have been included that might not have been, or do you feel really satisfied with all the terms referenced in there?
For the most part, we didn't really have any troubles with it. We left it fairly, not I wouldn't say vague, but didn't try to get too worried as to what was there and left it fairly open so that it was something plain and simple and easy document to understand. So I don't really think there was much in there there was a few things that we took out, but that was just wording issues, but I really don't see anything that needed to be added, just for the simple fact that it's just on paper what I've seen the department's doing since I've been interim chief there. I know we've had, I think, 5 meetings in the last year and a bit, so it's just, I know that they've tried to get it off the ground a couple times and it's always fallen short. And then Coaldale originally wasn't at the table many years ago when it came out as first draft, and now they joined on, so it's.
I think this has been going on for a long time.
It has, so.
As I read through it, I question why there was always this, are we gonna lose our autonomy? And a lot of those conversations, and it's like, none of that would be reflected in this at all.
And this isn't and then there's nothing that might have stemmed from, I believe, the regional chiefs, which was probably not quite a few years ago.
That was good.
It would have been 7 or 8 years ago, I believe, so.
Yeah. And then this sort of came out shortly afterwards, and I think there's a ripple effect from that.
This has been worked on for quite a few years. I wasn't really part of the making of this, and I believe everybody was ready to bring this to council just before COVID hit, and then it just fell off again, so. And we finally got together, got it back up and running, so.
For the yearly goals, I guess, you guys do those already, or?
Not as of yet.
Okay.
So we just, the only real projects or yearly goals we have, that was kind of a point towards it. So one of our yearly goals for this, even though it's not formalized yet, would be the RMS system, is basically to pick and choose one that the county is going to work on if we decide not to go with the one that the city's offering.
Other questions?
Sure.
Did you have a question?
Yes, I do.
Go ahead.
I'll ask more if others don't. So does this allow for then, within this committee, do you guys look at sort of shared resources and, when you're needing to purchase items, are you able to look at others and say, hey, you know, if we sort of bulk buy, we'll realize some savings?
Yes, and it's a,
Training and,
training is actually probably gonna be one of the bigger points of this, I believe, going forward, because we lost our regional grant, the government grant we used to bring everybody together to the table to dish out the courses. Now we don't have that. So I know training will be one of the topics. Bulk purchases or discounts would be, it came out late last year. Pitcher View was looking at purchasing some new SCBA's to go to the county standard. I believe the county standard was made as part of this too. Coaldale and ourselves had already went on the standard because we purchased our new BAs almost 2 years ago now. But with the arrival of engine 22 and us keeping engine 23 as a backup, we were 4 packs short. So when Chief West brought that to the table, that he was purchasing some, and if he could get 50 packs in order, we could deal straight with the manufacturer and get a significant discount. We hopped in there with them, and I believe Tabor Fire as well, and were able to get, I believe, 20% off of that. So it was quite a bit of savings.
yeah, oh, good.
So it's nothing formalized yet, but it's just, if we've got something on the go, we bring it to the table and let everybody else have a crack at it, I guess.
That's perfect.
Go ahead, Councillor Potry.
I did have a question about the fire services districts, Matt. So what is it, I guess, what does it mean to have the fire service district? Is that?
Those are basically our response areas, and there are possibly open to change this as a older map, but those fire service districts are basically our response areas. So that's the geographical area we cover for basically where our hall is at, and significant roadblocks like the river. So like I said, we would probably have a little bit more on the other side of the river. The only problem is we have to drive all the way down the river, all the way up 845 to get to it. So it's,
Yeah, it looks like it's based on response time.
and those are our primary zones that they're looking at changing, just depending on how the county goes with Lethbridge. They may shift stuff around, and the new dispatching software is supposed to be a little bit better at picking time. So the areas may change a little bit, and we've just combined responses, I guess, is a big thing. Not so much with this agreement, but we do have that as well. So that's something else we talk about, or if we're working on projects in this with the dispatches. If I know during the daytime that it's more difficult to get bodies around, that I can automatically, depending on where the call is, call for Nobleford or call for Pitcher View to come and assist, just to make sure that we've got enough manpower resources coming to a call off the start, instead of showing up realizing we need more and then having to call and wait that 5 extra minutes or whatever it takes them to get paged down. So
Do these, I'm curious about these zones, do they reflect on our district, sorry? Do they reflect on our agreement, I guess, with the county then? Is that more or less the same as where it's is already?
that's, I believe that's where these originally came from.
Okay, thanks.
I just have a question for you. I was just looking at the actual document,
Yes.
and I noticed that it is in draft form. So has this been something that's been approved by like this group already?
Draft 2 years, the approval, or the form that we basically stamped
Okay,
off
okay.
and need to bring to council. For it to be final, it has to be
Perfect.
approved by everyone's councils.
Great. Thank you. All right. Any other questions?
I have a comment, not so much a question. I love that you said putting all the resources on the table and sharing. I think that's a really cool attitude. But I also just wanted to say thank you for everything that you've been doing in the last little while and during this turbulent time. We really appreciate you and your dedication to the town and to the fire department.
Thank you.
And yeah, we're very grateful for you. So thank you.
Would anyone like to make a motion?
So I can.
All right.
I move that the council of the town of Colhurst hereby approves the Joint Chiefs Committee terms of reference revised January 26, 2022 as presented.
Any further discussion or questions? All in favor? Great, that's carried. Thank you. Thank you very much. Before you leave, one of the things that I would love to do, and CAO Hodo, we'd love to go and do a little bit of a tour of the fire station and do some stuff. And maybe come visit you guys. I want to wear a helmet, basically.
We can probably arrange that.
Okay.
Can we go for a ride in the fire?
It's not hard to do, you just have to ask, so. That was one of the things brought up when we had our last officer meeting, was actually inviting you guys out to the station.
Yeah.
For a training night. Not too sure, we'd have to pick a Wednesday that works for you guys and then try and have something that's a little bit more than our physical fitness night we just did last week, so.
There we go. That would be great. So if we could arrange that, that would be lovely.
That's not promising.
Perfect.
Just as long as it's not, some kind of a strongman event that we have to take part in.
I don't know, that might be fun.
Any competition things, like, I don't know, is there a fire pole that we have to try to climb?
No fire pole on station, that's it. That was, we're dragging around those dummies and crawling through our fire props the other day for their physical fitness, so. Might have been exciting.
I'd just like to echo what Councilor Florence said. Thank you for all the work that you've been doing. I know that you're in an interim role right now, and we really appreciate everything that you and all of your people are doing, so that's great.
Well, hasn't been as difficult as we thought it would be. Everybody seems to be stepping up to the plate, and there's a lot of exciting new ideas coming forward all the time. So we are moving forward and changing for the better, so.
That's awesome.
It's amazing for the guys there.
Yeah.
Yeah, thank you.
Thanks for coming in tonight. You're welcome to stay if you'd like, otherwise you don't have to. But you can.
I've got more paperwork and other fun stuff.
Okay.
We'll invite you when we're having budget conversations. That's when it's really exciting. Okay, Mr.
Yes. Take that down.
All right, thanks. You have a good night.
Thank you so much.
Okay, so we'll move on now. We have no citizens, so we're skipping that part. And no business arising, so we're moving right on to our bylaws and reports, starting with our committee minutes from the Policy Bylaw Review Committee. The first policy is number 000115, smoke and or vape-free environments. RK, would you prefer me to turn this over to you, or should we turn it over to?
The chair.
Is that?
We'll start.
Okay, there we go.
Thanks, Mayor Martina. Just a quick summary of what we kind of went over in the committee there. We looked at essentially adding the word vaping to the smoke-free environments and the smoke-free playgrounds and athletic fields. So it was just kind of updating the definition and then just putting that, using those words, not quite interchangeably, but both at the same point. So it's just kind of a small update there. Just to touch on the council recognition, for that one, we were just talking about at the end of the councilor's time in council versus the end of the term. So if somebody was to leave halfway, or if they ran for 3 terms and then at the end of the 3 terms, just to make it a little bit easier instead of piling them all up. Besides that, we went over a couple of the policies. I believe one of the policies was the iPad usage policy, which talked about the iPads that were given out to new councilors after an election. We just kind of updated that one to laptops because that's what's current. Went over a few of the other policies, kind of starting at the front, and nothing major there. The only other thing we had was the youth committee policy. The way that it was worded, it kind of seemed to be filling the same purpose of what FCSS was doing. So our thoughts were to strike that one out, and then from that point, if we were going to look at a youth advisory committee, we would probably be redoing the terms of reference on that policy because it would be pretty dated from what we were seeing before. So we thought that one was a little bit obsolete in its current state. I guess just looking at the agenda, there was a few recommendations that came from that. So the first recommendation that we have, I'll put forward as a motion. It's I move that the Council of the Town of Colehurst hereby approve policy number 000115, smoke and or vape-free environments, as amended and presented.
Any questions or discussion on this item?
I can, please.
Go ahead.
So it was a smoke-free environment, and I'm wondering what was the thought process, or sort of what led to determining to put vape in there as well? So is that something that could come forward as a recommendation, or was that something you were just going through the policies and said, hey, we need this in here, or?
Was there, CEO, was there any recommendation from like the government regarding regulations on vaping? I think there's limitations there, right?
Yeah, it was the ASH sort of thing. I forget what it stands for. Alberta.
Smoking, action, and health.
Yeah, something like
Yeah.
that. Maybe forward to add that to your bylaws or policies.
Thank you, thank you.
Great, any other discussion or questions? All in favor? Great, that's carried, thank you.
Just moving on to the second recommendation there. It's another motion that I'll put forward. It's, I move that bylaw number 43222, smoke and or vape free playgrounds and athletic fields bylaw as, or sorry, move that the town, sorry, I don't know if this will, words today, and none of them are right. I move that the council of the town of Culver hereby adopt bylaw 43222, smoke and or vape free playgrounds and athletic fields bylaw as amended and presented.
Any discussion or questions? All in favor? That's carried, thank you. Alright, oh, we have to do it again.
Shall I make the next motions? We'll read for the first time.
You will?
Sure. I'll
Okay.
make it the first time.
Great.
Sure.
Thank you.
So I'll move that the bylaw number 432-22, smoke and or vape free playgrounds and athletic fields bylaw is hereby read a first time.
Discussion? All in favor? Carried, thank you. Who wants to go for the second time?
Okay, I'll do it.
Great.
I move that bylaw number 432-22 is hereby read a second time.
Discussion? All in favor? Carried. And the last one. I will move that bylaw 232-22 be given the 3 readings at this meeting. All in favor? Carried, great, thank you. Okay.
Yeah.
Man, how many do we have? Would you like to make a motion, Councilor Poitras?
Yes, I would. I move.
There we go. Go, I'll get it there.
43222, smoke away from the grounds, field bylaws be given third and final reading. The mayor and chief administrative officer be authorized to sign and seal the bylaw.
Any discussion? All in favor? Great, that's carried, thank you.
Okay, so also, I will move that the town of Colhurst hereby approve policy number 11-01-16, council recognition as amended and presented.
Any discussion or questions on this item? Seeing none, all in favor? Great, that's carried, thank you. So now we'll move on to, we've got another one here. Councilor Flores, did you have this one as well?
I move that the council of the town of Colhurst hereby rescind policy number 00-01-23 youth committee.
Any discussion on this one?
I did have a question. Did you have an alternative process in place then if the youth committee gets together to plan annual events in lieu of this bylaw or this policy?
Councilor Evans?
Thanks, Deputy Mayor Caldwell. I think currently right now the funding, if I understand correctly, has been kind of put forward to FCSS, and they are kind of running some of the events that the youth committee would previously be doing. I've also heard that the youth committee had folded and kind of closed out their bank account previously, so there's no active committee at this time.
So are there any portions within that policy that might impact? So there's a youth committee and then there's there's 2 components to the youth committee. They would do annual events that it's not my understanding that they chose to not run any of those any longer. COVID of course had an impact on that. And then there was of course running of the youth center, which they gave over to FCSS. So I'm just wondering if if there's some kind of an alternative in mind to be able to present to that committee to say, if you still have an interest in running those annual events, this is the process that you're welcome to follow, right?
I don't believe there's currently anything in place. However, I know Councilor Poitras and myself have been kind of talking about a youth advisory committee and possibly looking at bringing something like that forward to council, probably around the time of strategic planning. And then we'll have a little bit of a gap here, but then at that time we can kind of address that need and see how we want to get youth involved in the community. and go forward.
Okay, that's a great idea, that you did last year. Yeah, for sure. So I suspect then that, we'll just sort of reach out to, or I probably could just reach out to some of those members and just maybe direct them through Rec and Culture or Parks and Rec, or if they're looking at running any. Is that going to be sort of the rallying point?
From my understanding at this point, it would probably be through Rec and Culture.
Rec and Culture, yeah.
If they were to do an event or something like that, and then from there, could be funneled out how at that point.
Yeah, okay. Yep, I mean, I'm comfortable with that change, even though it was, blood, sweat, and tears that brought that policy into place. I'm comfortable with the change as long as there's an alternative if they continue past, once, the COVID guidelines lift. Yeah. Good, thank you.
Further discussion?
For me, it was just a comment, but I think the way it was, I think the way it was worded, it seemed more to me like, here's a pot of money that they can access, right? It didn't really have any clear definition of who constituted the youth committee, how they were formed, it was a little vague in terms of, compared to what our committee terms and references are now, so. And I think an advisor, the title youth committee led me to believe that, yeah, they were involved, but it seemed like they were just not directly involved with council. They would just be applying for an event, like you were saying, right? That seems to be the purpose of it. So I think that we should have a youth advisory committee, and maybe they can put a budget forward and ask for money that way, right? I'm not sure, but I don't know if it needs to have a specific dollar amount tied to it every year as part of the policy. Because maybe some years they want to build a skate park, maybe they want to build a skate park or something, right? In that case, we'll be looking at bigger expenditures than an event.
And I suspect then, I think it's smart if we have one rallying point, right, when they're looking at doing those kinds of things. And I'm not opposed to the removal of it, I was just looking for the alternative. Our original conversation was I thought we were revising it, but, as long as there is an alternative, for some of those members, if they want to continue to step forward. This has been a crazy 2 years, right? So people have stepped back from things that they had wanted to accomplish.
Well, maybe can I ask Seattle how to, is it easier to strike a policy and then create a new one, or amend a policy in this case? Doesn't matter.
Go ahead.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Yeah, it really doesn't matter. Like I say, policy bylaws are works in progress regardless. And I think as Councilor Poultry indicated, the policy as it stated or, was written was such that basically there was just a $2,500 figure that was provided to this youth committee to put on stuff, provided they provided a financial statement showing, where their funds went to that effect. And, and as indicated earlier there tonight, the members of the existing members of the bank account that they had was turned over and basically dissolved to the town in the last year. So on that basis, it didn't seem like there was a committee, whether it was for events or for what they drop in center or whatever. And that's why when the committee looked at it, it was felt that at this point in time, there wasn't a committee, there wasn't anybody that really said that they would still do the other events necessarily. And through the Rec and Culture Committee and or the Parks and Rec Society, perhaps it could go. The other option that we have is the community grant policy that we have in place. So if there is, a community group that wants to apply for up to $2,500 in there for a certain thing, that can be looked at as well on a twice-a-year basis. So that's another option. So
Thank you. Further questions?
I guess I would like to wonder if we couldn't get it. I know we keep waiting for everything hinging on our strategic planning. But from my perspective, I feel like we need to engage the youth regardless. And I feel like they need more attention, let's say, and then directed, focused engagement, ongoing engagement than perhaps an average citizen, let's say, because they don't participate to the same level on Facebook or directly with us. So I feel like we should. I'm fine with pursuing that policy, but I would like to maybe make a motion afterwards to establish the youth advisory committee policy bylaw. Then when administration is available to try to craft that.
Councilor Florence?
Sorry, I think what you could do is recommend it to the committee and then the committee would look after that?
Yeah.
Yeah, okay.
Yes, that sounds good to me.
Okay,
I think that's a great idea, yeah.
Yeah, I think so too.
so then with this, any more questions on the current motion that we have put forward? No? All right, all in favor?
And opposed.
And opposed? Great. Thank you. So Councilor Petrie, you had indicated that you would like
Yes.
to make another motion?
Yes, I would like to I move that the policy and bylaw review committee prepare a draft youth advisory committee bylaw.
That's it.
That's it.
Okay. Perfect, thank you. Any questions on this current motion?
Just, what was your intent with that? So to engage the youth?
Yeah, maybe, yeah,
Yeah,
maybe we should add that onto the motion, maybe. For a way to regularly engage with the youth.
so we're looking at the formation of a youth advisory committee for the purposes of regular engagement with youth, or consistent engagement with youth, right?
Yes.
I guess that was a little bit of sadness attached because it happened organically with the youth center, right? They would come in and many of the people that went to the youth center became our, volunteers at the fire department and all of these other community leaders that stepped up. So I like that.
Any further questions? No. I do have a question for this. I'm curious if this is something that we know that youth want, or are we saying that this is what they need to do? Right, because we haven't really talked to them and consulted with them to see what it is that they're looking for, how they would like to engage with us. Are we making assumptions that they want to form a formal committee? Rather than them maybe doing some other types of things?
Can we then say that they explore drafting a policy, or they draft a policy for the intention of this? And I think concurrently that we reach out to look at who are our leaders at the high school, to impress our community, middle school.
That's a great idea. I feel like the policy committee, bylaw committee should look into that.
And they can get something started so that there's some teeth, so when they're asking to see if youth would like to become a part of this, they have a little bit of a bone to show them, a bit of a bones of a committee to show them and say, this is something, would you like to take part in something like this, right?
Or what would suit you better?
Yeah. So a bit of a straw dog, is that what they call
So my thought on this, and this is just my thing, I think that this is a wonderful idea. However, I do also feel that we should be talking to these youth, right, and figuring this out as part of our process that we're going to do. I think that we know that this will be something, whatever this engagement will look like, they're one of our stakeholders, absolutely, right? But I think I feel like they should be kind of engaged in the same type of process that we would do with all other stakeholders. So if we're going to be doing focus groups or whatever that is with other groups, whether it's the businesses or the whatever, throughout our process, I kind of feel like they should kind of be able to participate in that as well, rather than us just going and being like, hello, would you like to do this thing? It is just my thought that at this point.
Yeah. Well, I totally agree. I feel like at some points we get handcuffed because, we want to make all these changes, but then we can't make these changes until we make these changes. So, as CIO Hoda has outlined multiple times, they're work in progress as always, and they can be revised on an ongoing basis. And I think that shouldn't hinder us from getting started on some good ideas now, even if they're slightly wrong or need to be tweaked. That's my thought, is that this is a simple one. It's not as complicated as restructuring all our committees or to line up with our strategic initiatives. It's just a small piece of that, so.
Go ahead, Councillor Ackerman.
Thank you. I believe that what Councillor Poitras is saying is kind of my sentiments too. I think that we should be kind of a little bit proactive in kind of coming up with a rough framework. Maybe not finishing off the final draft of the policy, but kind of having a rough idea. At the same time, we should be engaging with the youth in the community to find out if this is something that they want to take part in. Maybe reach out to the school and find out if there's anyone that might be kind of a leader amongst their peers that might be interested, or even reach out to some people that might have recently graduated, if we know of any of them that have been involved previously, and then just kind of, I guess, work on the framework a little bit in the background while we kind of source out who would be interested in this. And then, we can talk to them about the framework of it to that point too, and see, does this kind of align with what they would like to do within the community, or make changes that way, right? Because I think it comes down to kind of like what we're seeing with the volunteer fire department, right? Where we don't want to plop down a chief in there and just say, this is the way it's going to be, right? I'd rather have that conversation with them and find out what's going to work for them, what's going to keep them engaged, what's going to add value to them within the community, and then kind of work towards that as a common goal. But I think that even just kind of doing a little bit of research and finding out what other communities might be doing for youth advisory committees would be handy in the interim.
Thank you. I just have one more comment, that as the motion is written, that this is going to be go to the policy bylaw committee for a draft policy with the intention of the formation of a youth advisory committee. I support that very much. I think that there's no harm in doing the background work of figuring out what exactly would this group even do before actually consulting with them to say, do you want to be part of this? I think we have to be very clear to figure out, because you can't really go to someone and be like, do you want to be part of this committee, but we don't really know what they're going to do. Mm-hmm. And so I think it's very much starting out with that, what is this framework or something like that we're potentially proposing, and then bringing that alongside of when we go and actually have that conversation with them to see if it fits or does not.
I think there'd be some wonderful opportunities to partner with FCSS. And what were you talking about, their leadership group that they have through there? The youth group? Thank you, that's right, youth group. I mean, we have lots of different opportunities. And if we look at the City of Lethbridge, their Youth Advisory Council, their mandate, they did some really cool things. Right? I'm looking forward to having a mayor for the day. I'm sitting next to some young teenager with great ideas. Not that you don't have amazing ideas.
Yeah, come on, replace me already. Any additional questions or comments? Go ahead.
I agree, going to them with the purpose is very good idea to say, we want, these are the things we want you to do mayor for a day or whatever. Something that they can interest them, right?
That's great, thank you. We'll call the question, all in favor? That is carried, thank you. All right, Councillor Florence, I see we have a proposed motion.
Thank you. So just a little bit of a backstory. While we were in the policy bylaw meeting, some of the things that came up were do people know how to advertise and all the outlets that they could potentially advertise in. And so just as the place for it to potentially go for some work to be done on that, we thought to move it to the Recreation and Culture Committee to create kind of a package or connect with the local groups and organizations somehow to as a way to inform and connect. And so that's where it comes from. So I'll make the motion. I move that the Council of the Town of Colhurst hereby authorize administration to send a letter to the Recreation and Culture Committee suggesting that an info package be given to all local groups and organizations outlining procedures for requests for advertising their events through the town office.
Any further questions?
Yes, if I could. Sorry, I just need, so the background you're saying is that has been the process, or we're looking at having that be the process? Maybe.
Thank you. So I guess it came up as just part of our discussion. It was do we think that everybody knows this? And the answer was no, we don't think that everybody knows all the different ways that they can advertise, how to get it on the electronic sign, which day to maybe get it in for the month by, right? Yeah, for the community calendar, the town news and things like that. And and to just make it easy for community groups to be able to do that, right?
So traditionally, they would just come into the town office and we're saying, now we're gonna funnel it through this committee, and the town is going to be drafting that up, is that?
Sorry, just to clarify, I think just as a way, because there's currently no ways to do that except for this committee, so like as a way of like creating a package just to inform people. Like more of like, I'm thinking more of like a pamphlet, like, did you know, like, you know, that you can advertise on this, that this needs to be in by this date, that kind of thing.
Councillor Patry?
I would just like to say too that I think it sounds like a good idea that we have a package that can be passed around, because not everybody's gonna have time to come in during office hours, right? To talk to somebody in the office, they might be, working full time and still want to put on an event, right? So having things online as much as possible to be able to be accessed whenever they have time, a package would be great.
Oh, I think a package is wonderful. I was just kind of confused because traditionally, any of the community groups, if they wanted to advertise anything through the town, they would come to the town office and they would just they email and submit their request to Les to get put on the sign outside, and and they would send in a request, and Les, I'm gonna keep pointing at Les over there, to get into the town newsletter and all those kinds of things and onto the community calendar. But if we're looking at a new process of funneling it all through, if we're looking at funneling everything through Rec and Culture Committee, then that is a bigger conversation we should have maybe. Is that?
Councillor Ackerman?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Deputy Mayor Caldwell, sorry, I'm just jumping on a couple of my words tonight. I think there might be a little bit of a disconnect from what I think Councillor Florence is trying to say. So this isn't redirecting the process through Rec and Culture. This would just be creating a package so that if there was a new community group that formed and they didn't know the proper way to get a notice on the digital sign or on the community events calendar, this is just kind of information saying this is how you would go about it, and then it would still funnel through the town itself. But it's just kind of like a welcome package and kind of like a roadmap for how to achieve what you want to achieve.
Councillor Florence?
And I just want to clarify too, I'm definitely not suggesting that I go through the Rec and Culture Committee. I think we have that, not everything we funnel through, that just the creation of the information to go to these different groups. And I also think it might be a good way for the Rec and Culture Committee to connect with different groups too. It's a good starting point. But I think that definitely needs to still go through the town, just informing people of how best to do that.
Yeah, oh, good, yeah, because I would hate to think that we're going to try to, everything kind of funnels through the town in terms of all the advertising and everything, and to try to coordinate that, I can just see. I know Les is thinking, yes, please do, please, just take a look at.
Any further questions? I'll call the question. All in favor? That is carried. Thank you. Okay, so we're going to move on to MSDA, and Councillor Patry, you are the chair of this committee, I believe. Is there anything that you would like to highlight? I don't believe there's any recommendations that came forward.
No, thank you, Mayor Martina. I did discuss these minutes, the topics of these minutes at our last council meeting. So this is just really the formal documentation of that additional permit that was applied for. You will see, of course, the development officer's report, which shows the number of permits issued, which may be of interest to you for this year. 54 so far, whereas we had 43 last year. So the no motion to come out of that.
Great, thank you. Any questions about those minutes? All right, we'll move on to Community Sustainability and Enhancement Committee. I am the chair of this committee. I did just want to make note that on the minutes, my name is spelled incorrectly. Just for, no, that's okay. So that's okay. I just wanted to let you know in case I'm not. And so from this, you will see from the minutes, we did just talk a little bit about public transportation and also more discussion about the Pathways project. And just our zero emissions vehicle infrastructure program. And we did have one recommendation to come out of this, and Councillor Ackermans, I do believe that you made this.
So I move that the council of the town of Colhurst hereby request administration to bring forward the final quotes for the Colhurst Pathways Scope Change Number 1, work for consideration prior to proceeding further.
Does anyone have any questions on this item? Councillor Florence?
So just to clarify, so there was, everything that's brought forward to this committee in regards to the changes and the updates to the walking path?
Seeing Rhoda, please help us. I don't remember right now.
Yeah, this, I mentioned it briefly at our last council meeting in my report there. So this was just formally taken to this committee because this committee has worked on this for the past year. So the two changes that were talked about were, as indicated, some no stopping signs or no parking signs basically on 3rd Street where the pathways cross and 51st where it crossed, as well as putting some posts and chain in places, in particular, say by the trailer court area, where you can basically go off the road and onto the path and out to 55th. So it was talked about that we authorized the engineering to get the information and get a quote for the work, but just prior to proceeding with that work, because it was talked about that it could range from $15,000 to $30,000, and internally, depending on the one area that we were a little concerned with, talking with our public works people, was the signage for those no stopping things. It seemed to be a bit of a high quote for that, so it was indicated that if that's the best quote they can come up with, our people could probably do it cheaper, and so then we wouldn't authorize that part of the work, but we may authorize the other part of it. So, but if it comes in right, then we may go, and that's why it was just said for these two things to bring it forward. And this is over and above work from what was done last year, so it's not like it was part of the original intent. It would have to be something that is budgeted in 2022. So,
Any further questions? I'll call the question. All in favor? That's carried. Thank you. Okay, so now we'll move on to the Rec and Culture Committee. Oh,
Sorry.
I'm sorry.
Sorry, there was a little more on there, under other business.
Oh,
The
sorry.
committee discussed ideas for the constructed wetland stormwater management facility area. Did you have any, anything to share from that discussion? Was there anything that came out of that, or?
Councillor Ackermans, is there anything that you particularly remember?
I think it was just more of a general conversation about what was going on there.
Okay.
Possibly, like nothing concrete by any means, just kind of like, what kind of area are we looking at? Is there room for like electric vehicle charger there, that sort of thing, right? So it was just kind of more just general conversation versus anything that had any teeth to it.
I would request that our planner come to us, sort of with a design, and we have a conversation about, like a holistic picture of that whole area, and what that could look like for us. At a committee of the whole. Are you comfortable with that process?
Yeah, I think that's a great a great suggestion. I think that, like, as Councillor Ackermans was kind of indicating, that we were just even talking about that design that was put out there to the community, and whether that was actually conceptually like what's going to happen or not. So it was more of a conversation just around where we were at with the project, but I really do appreciate it and think that that's a great idea.
Yeah, I know that was just conceptual, and we always meant, I think, to have her come back and have more conversations about that, right?
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Councillor Country?
That would be more of a landscape, I would think, and community. A planner doesn't seem to be the right person to be, I think, but.
Well, Diane is our everything, okay? Diana's our planner. She just does everything for us.
Yeah, but I'm architect in your council.
Okay, we have not.
I actually want to talk about zero emissions vehicle infrastructure program, and I only want to bring it up because working with the town of Coaldale on theirs right now, and they're getting $200,000 for their stuff, and they're putting in probably at least 8 spots, so maybe more. So So not that we're, we're always trying to be better than Coldell, I know.
Seattle County, you had your hand up first, I'll just go to you first.
Yeah, thank you, Madam Mayor. So just back to the constructed wetland, obviously, as indicated there, once we have a final design sort of done, which we have our engineers here not too long ago that talked about, we're in the process of developing that. That'll come forward to council with, here's the final design. That final design will then kind of have an indication as to what area is potentially there for a development. There will be some potential residential, commercial, or whatever we may choose, possibly. There also is, even in the conceptual drawing, because of that big gas line that runs along 223, there will be some area that potentially will be green space or recreational, or as our director of operations has indicated, if and when maybe another type social type area. He'd also would like to relocate his, the RV dump station there and tie it directly into the sewer as opposed to, the septic or tank system that he has now. And so, yeah, there'll be obviously, further discussions with council, not as this committee, because it is a full council area plan, if you want to call it area structure plan. That's definitely the plan. So first of all is to get that finalized design to show what area is left, and then from there, start to plan as to what we may want to do with it. So.
And when we were first meeting with Michaela about this plan, they were talking about the need to bring someone who can help us really with the plans. That there's a specialty required in order to get the right plans in there. Is that something that they're going to come forward with as well? A plan on?
Well, definitely the vegetation that has to be there and all
Yeah.
that type of stuff is obviously, that's part of why it's, a constructed wetland as opposed to a
Yeah.
storm detention pond or retention pond. That's part of the plan is to make it that. And then from there, connect it to our potential walking paths in the future, et cetera, et cetera. So yeah, engineers to the experts they have to whether there's over or above experts in regards to that, but that would be part of the picture.
Sorry, I forgot that was the development part. I forgot that was the development part on that.
Well, that would be a conversation we can have.
Councilor Ackerman, I saw you had your hand up.
Yeah, just to kind of touch on what Councillor Poultry was talking about, the zero emissions vehicle infrastructure program. One of the things that we were talking about is the feasibility of putting in the fast chargers. You do need the electrical infrastructure for that, and I believe that we don't really have any concrete places in town for that at the time. One of the thoughts that we had was as nice as it would be to get some chargers in now, we don't think that now, we don't want to just plunk one down for the sake of plunking one down. We want to be kind of mindful of where we're putting it. So I think it was kind of, when we were looking at the wetlands, maybe seeing if there was a position where we could leave a little bit of a space open for that, maybe down the road. I think right now with the way the infrastructure is, I don't think there'd be a huge benefit to trying to get one in at this point in time.
Councilor Poultry?
I'm just, thank you. I'm slightly concerned that the 100% funding will expire, I guess, or do we have a reserved, is that fully reserved funding?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. We don't have any money in reserves for that particular type of project at this point. I mean, we do have reserves that you may allocate towards that possibly, but nothing that's specifically listed as for electric vehicle charger stations.
So, sorry.
Deputy Mayor Caldwell, I saw you had your hand up first.
Yeah,
Councilor Poultry?
So we were part of the project with Southborough. So is there not funding that's going to be made available to us for that project? Or did we have to apply to Southborough after our letter?
Yeah, thank you, Madam Mayor. Again, with Southborough, they were applying for a grant that was different than the MCCAC funding.
Yeah.
And so they just wanted an intent from municipalities as to whether or not it's something you may consider so that they could formally put that in their application. They've received their funding now, which is less towards the project than the MCCAC funding. However, is still there, so they're still looking for the possibility of who now would like to move forward further with that. But there was nothing guaranteed, it was just with the intent of their grant expression that they were putting forward. They've now received it, and now there's the two sources of funding that are there.
Go to you just a second.
So maybe if the administration could clarify, is there any risk of losing our funding, I guess, if we delay until potentially the wetland project is completed?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Well, again, it's government funding, the municipal climate action change, that's where we're potentially getting, well, not potentially, we are getting money towards our solar project that's underway at the present time. And, so there's always funding there, but there's limited, as to what it is. I mean, then they come forward another year with some different funding or whatever the case is. So, I mean, it's, potentially you may lose out on this round of funds that are there, but it's not to say that, I mean, I think this is something that, like solar and whatever, there's going to be further green funds towards that type of stuff moving into the future. And like I said, the biggest thing with us, as Councilor Ackerman has indicated, and talking with our Director of Operations, if we want the fast charging station, we need 3-phase power. And the only place we have 3-phase power is at our lift stations, which obviously are not ideal sites to put as charging station at this point. And if you're going to do the slow charge one, again, in talking with some people, that's a 3 to 4 hour charge. So again, you have to, their suggestion was, be, by maybe a restaurant if you had, or, maybe a recreation area that somebody could go for a walk, that type of stuff, and stay in town for a while and draw them. But again, it's the slower charging thing. And even there again, we've talked about at the office here, not a lot of parking here, when we have certain meetings. We talked about across the street, not necessarily ideal. We don't have, some of the other suggestions they had were like rinks. If you have rinks in your community, obviously you have 3-phase power and potentially lots of parking. We have our community center, which again doesn't have 3-phase power, and sometimes doesn't have a lot of parking for events either when it comes right down to full capacity. So right now, that's our biggest thing: 3-phase power, and where do we put it, even if it's not 3-phase power required.
Councilor Ackerman.
Thank you, Mayor Martina. Councilor Poetry, just to kind of add on to that too, I think part of the funding from like the MCCAC is just for the chargers themselves, so we would still probably have infrastructure costs on top of that funding rate. So there would still be probably a significant contribution from the town.
Yes, I appreciate that, Councilor Ackerman. But if we're getting funding for something that, that is going to give us a return eventually for people who are charging on it, I think we would want to jump on it as soon as we could. I mean, without investing a significant amount, if it's a small amount for big return, I would think we should jump on it. But if there's no fear of the funding expiring, then I don't see to me to jump on it right away, and then maybe waiting is an okay idea.
I'll just go to you in one second, Deputy Mayor. So just to provide some more context too, when we were looking at this, and I think it's something that we've kind of outlined, or that I even put out in the mayor's message today, is that we want to be very deliberate in our actions, right? And knowing that at this point in time, we have nowhere for this to really go. We would just be kind of doing it because we want to do it, but where is this actually going to take place? And so that's kind of part of our conversation was looking at, if we are going to do the wetlands, and maybe this is where we look more and have more forethought, I guess, to say like, this is where we'd like this to go. Could this actually work here, rather than just getting something because the funding is available and not knowing what to do with it.
And yeah, if I could, and I was just going to say that, right across from the wetlands, we're also going to have some commercial development, and that would probably be sort of a smart area for it. But I was just really curious about when you're talking about 3-phase power, what does that look like? Are we at a disadvantage that we don't have that in our community? Like, is that something we should be exploring? If they're saying rinks have it, community centers have it, and we only have it at our lift station? And is that something NMAX can help us with?
Well, again, if you have a rink, obviously, because of the apparatus and the equipment that it has to run, naturally has 3-phase power.
Okay.
Our community hall, based on what it is, does not need 3-phase power. So, if we had, well, let's say your NMAX centers and those types of places, obviously has it again because they're bigger. So is it a disadvantage? Perhaps, but I mean, it's, you're not just gonna put it in some place where you don't need it either, because as Councilor Ackerman did indicate, I mean, the funding is there towards the charger, but the 3-phase power and all that hookup is not part of what you get covered in the grant either. So, so you have to have a source for it. Like I say, our lift stations need it, hence that's where it is right now. Even our shops, town shops don't have it either, so it's just
Yeah.
limited where it is.
You know, but they sit here every once in a while and say, is there a project that we can work on with you, right, when they're coming in and speaking? Is that something we want to explore with?
Like who you say.
Is it Denmark that come in? Who is it that comes in and speaks to us every once in a while with the guys with the power?
For this,
Thank you, Fortis, I apologize. I've got COVID memory right now. But, you know, they come and sat with us and have conversations every once in a while about, you know, what you need from us, type of conversations. And this might be too big of an ask or too big of a reach, but is it worth exploring?
again, you have to determine where is it necessary and is it viable to have installed.
Mhm.
Like I say, where we need it now for the equipment that we need it for, it's there.
Mhm.
And, you know, like Kevin's indicated, moving forward with our constructed wetland area, you know, we're going to have some sort of power requirements there for whatever. At that time,
Mhm.
you know, in the planning of that area, it would make sense to plan for three-phase power to be there
Mhm.
for whatever you may want to put there, so.
And I feel a little disappointed because I think we are the optimal community for something like that. If people are just commuting between Lethbridge and here and, you know, getting around town. I mean, I've been really excited at this. So but I agree with you that we have to be deliberate in moving forward and planning things. So that's as long as we just with great intention, keep it on the table, right?
From my perspective, absolutely right, but I think it's very much, in my mind, I just want to be deliberate in what we're doing, and so that it does make sense and it does follow
Yeah.
some type of something. Councilor Butchie?
I just wanted to, maybe throw a wrench in things a little bit, but, I don't, like, I think it sounds like most of the conversation has been, how can we provide a community spot, right, for the residents? But it's actually for visitors is what we're talking about, because it was gonna park, community center in their house probably has one if they have an electric vehicle. I'm wondering, why isn't the town office is a good location? I mean, maybe Les is gonna buy a Bolt next year, right? So. We're not looking, I mean, we're looking at, yes, nobody has an electrical vehicle at town offices right now. But we're hiring 2 new people, or, you know, people are gonna buy new cars in the future. Electrical vehicles are coming in the future, right? So, why isn't it a good idea to have that down, I guess is what I'm asking.
I can say that from our meeting, when we talked about that, it has more to do with the amount of spaces that we have here available for parking. And sometimes the lot here, even without having something like that, it gets full. And so that I think was part of the concern, is that there's just not enough parking in general sometimes.
And while I agree with you that it pulls people into town, if we have a fast charger versus something somebody plugs in at home, residents, I think, would use it as well, right? You know,
And I think that when we look back at that, when we were saying, you know, like if this was at the wetlands, then there's something for them to do, right? Even if it is a fast charger, at least like there's a park to enjoy or there's something over there. And then if we're talking about more like commercial type of things being in that area, it makes sense, right? It makes sense for it to be there. But at this point in time, we just really felt like we couldn't even really identify a good place for something in the existing town. Any other questions? No? Okay. All right, we're going to move on. I don't even know where we are right now. Oh, Rec and Culture Committee, there we go, okay. So I'll just give a couple of highlights from this. The committee met for the first time a week ago, 2 weeks ago, and had some good conversations to carry on some of the projects that were previously started by this committee, one of which is the Memorial Garden. There are some other ideas there as to what that could look like, rather than a garden, but something that would be kind of spread out more around town, where people could either, you know, purchase a tree or a bench or something like that, so that it wouldn't just be in a single location. So some discussions on that. We talked a little bit more again about the needs assessment and getting that together so that that can come forward to help with strategic planning. And then next meeting will be actually set for this Thursday. And there will be a discussion more on the disc golf course project that will be coming forward. So that's exciting as well. Does anyone have any questions on anything? Go ahead, Councilor Cotry.
I see that, there was some discussion around the minors days, but the minors days committee was not at this meeting, really.
They were not. No, we decided to have our first meeting, just to kind of get everything sorted out, and they will be invited to, I'm not sure, Brody is the chair of the committee now. I'm not sure if he was inviting them to this next meeting or this will be after that, but they will be invited very shortly.
And then, oh, sorry, I had one other question. On the reconciliation activities that was proposed by Mr. McIntyre.
Mhm.
I really, I think that's great. Is that the appropriate place for it, I guess? Is it is a culture, possibly somewhat of a cultural thing, but I wonder if there's obviously broader things as well to do with reconciliation, so I'm wondering if it maybe should be addressed more broadly as well, this kind of, and then rolling together with the rec and culture committee, possibly. I'm not sure what the nature of those activities he was talking about was.
Yeah, and I can definitely elaborate on that. And so this was actually something that him and I had talked about even before we were elected, about potentially there could be something where we could work together. And that was just something that I brought up during the meeting, just to say, you know, like, there's a potential that we could go down this path. Again, don't really know what that could look like. I know that the school is doing their own Blackfoot celebrations, I believe is what they're calling it. And because I happened to be meeting for that and just chatted with them about the possibility of us partnering on different things. So at this point in time, there's really nothing. But it was just kind of more of a point of that this could be a potential partnership. Go ahead, Councilor Lawrence.
No, I had a question about that too, just the way it was written, because I was like, did I miss when they came to council? But thank you for clarifying that. I think it would be very cool to further explore some reconciliation activities. I have a few other questions as well.
Yeah.
So in terms of the membership, when it talks about not getting certain members of certain groups, I just had a question about how those groups were reached out to, or if they were reached out to in order to try to pursue their membership in this committee.
So one of the things was no. So we did have a member, Kim Porak was representing the college schools before, and then with her resignation, there was nobody there. From the 55 Plus Club, we had Pam Brown before, but she's up traveling the world, having a great time. And so no, I don't believe that we have reached out to them, but it's definitely something that can happen.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you for answering that. And then I guess I had a few comments about just when I was reading these, I had to really be like, okay, Parks and Rec and culture. And I think maybe the way the minutes are written are just like a little bit confusing with some of that.
Okay.
If that's just a touch of feedback, if any.
Yeah, for sure. I know, sometimes they sound kind of the same, but yes, absolutely.
And there's also one spelling error in your minutes. Now I'm nitpicking.
You go for it,
So
like,
it's just there.
Yeah.
With the memorial garden.
okay. Can you just identify that so that we can get that changed?
Yeah, I lost it. Okay, so the specific area, no, sorry, where'd that go? It's something about the memorial garden, he's gonna look into it.
Great.
Maybe I can always send you a
Okay.
message afterwards too.
Great.
Regarding their, so
Oh.
yeah, regarding their memorial structures.
THE.R. Yeah, right?
Yeah.
Okay, great, thank you. Was that everything?
Yes, that was it, thank you.
Heather, do you have something first?
I did not, I just love
What,
it.
Councilor Koshy?
I love the idea of a memorial garden. Could you elaborate on what the discussion there was?
Yes. So just to give some context, with the previous council, when we first started this committee, there was some discussion about having an actual memorial garden whereby people could then have, benches that were donated in memoriam of a loved one, because we do not have cemetery here. Could be trees, it could be sculptures, I think, was something that also kind of came forward. And when the committee had first met, they started looking at the park that somewhat has become known as the dog park in Sundance, which is not the dog park, but that park. And after we brought this forward and just had a discussion at the meeting, at this most recent rec and culture meeting, and some of the discussion was around, you know, like, well, that park with that new home that's being built in front of it, it's really not accessible. And we also talked a little bit about how being right on the highway, it's quite loud, like it's not really memorial-ish. And also that because there are some multifamily homes there, that park is probably a playground for a lot of kids, or like a place where they play. And so after some discussion around that, it was suggested that we consider what the city of Lethbridge is doing, where they have different like benches and things like that all throughout the city, rather than just having a specific area. And so this committee was going to go and find some more information about that to bring that forward to see if a potential program could be created from that.
That's great. I love that.
Is there other questions?
Is it not just a small lot right across from where the fire hall area and stuff is, in that little residential area? Wasn't it just a little corner lot that was kind of chunked off? Often what we've done in the past in different developments, so that they can meet their land quota to us, like we tend to pick up little pieces of chunks of that don't fit in, right?
There's a little triangle piece there, yeah, across from the recycle area, basically.
It says no parking anytime. Right?
Yeah, I mean, we have a few of those, and we have some in Sundance. Would that be worth exploring to see if we have some, because it doesn't need to be large. It just needs to be something, and that might be kind of cute if it's small and it's attractively fenced and some trees and some artwork and flowers and benches. I mean, that would be quite a beautiful little place, I think. Something like that. We just explore some of those odd little chunks of land that we have through the town.
And I think that that's, something to definitely bring forward. I think that with the committee, one of the things they really liked about the potential of being able to put your bench wherever is that it could help, like, maybe your person really enjoyed the pathways, like for example, or something like that. So it provides more opportunities to provide things as a town that we might need, more, whatever that might be, or trees or whatever, but in kind of the area where they got to choose. So it's less, I guess, about the actual place and the memorial on it. It's more about what's special to that individual person rather than having a collective place is the way they're looking at it.
Yeah, if I might though, I apologize.
Go ahead.
If I might though, I know when the original conversation started because the family said that they have nowhere to go to sit, right? Right, when they first say, they don't, because we don't have a graveyard in the community. And so they wanted to put something, and that's when they brought in the bench, the on rolls, right? Was that the first one that came in?
Yeah.
And so it went in, and so there's a lot of discussion around that, and then, there was a couple requests, and we thought, well, maybe it would be nice to create just that beautiful little private setting where you can just sit and reflect, right, and honor your family member. But I mean, I love the idea of having things around the town, and maybe it could be a hybrid.
Yeah.
Right, maybe.
Yeah, for sure.
Actually, was thinking Memorial Drive in Calgary, if you've ever been there. Memorial Drive is memorial. They've done a big garden on the corner of where they have the metal things. So like, yeah, and so they have a spot, and also the entire pathway is memorial because every tree is planted for a veteran that died in the war. So there's a combination connected.
It's very cool.
Yeah.
I think these are great things to bring back to that committee when they meet, and just to give a little more history too, because I only knew about it from the small chunk that I had heard about before. But thank you for the discussion. I think that's great. Any other questions about rec and culture?
I really look forward to the next meeting.
It'll be good.
I look forward to just not saying goodbye to everybody. Chew more report.
Okay, we'll move on now to the risk management committee. Is there anything that, I'm not sure who the chair of this one is. Is there anything that you'd like to highlight?
Yeah, so I just want to give a quick update on kind of our conversation. So CAO Hauda and the Director of Operations and Councillor Ackerman tonight met. So we will meet, I think we discussed 3 times this year, so that was the first. And so the Director of Operations kind of gave an update for the infrastructure master plan and what's happening with getting the assessment done and stuff. And so it was kind of talked about to keep our projects this year smaller, and waiting till we get that back, and then, making further decisions from that. And so that's pretty much it. There's a few projects as we've seen in the minutes that need to be done. Yeah. So should I just go ahead and?
Yeah.
Okay, so I move that the council of the town of Colhurst hereby approve the following 2022 capital projects at a cost not to exceed $150,000 with funding to be provided from the gas tax fund. And then I'll just read off the items. So it's recrown the gravel portion of Range Road 22-3 between 45th Avenue and 55th Avenue, which has an estimated cost of $25,000. A new sidewalk for the east side of 6th Street between the Colhurst Legion parking lot and the Colhurst IGA Pharmacy parking lot, plus a crosswalk at the intersection of 6th Street and 52nd Avenue with an estimate of $30,000, and then sidewalk and tile drain replacement on the west side of Spruce Drive between 50th Ave and 51st at an estimated cost of $75,000.
Great, any questions on any of these items? Go ahead, Councilor Cotry.
I thought at some point during the election that there was a lot of discussion around actually paving that section of road between 45th and 52nd. I guess I'm not sure when that could fit into our capital budget. Was that discussed?
It certainly was, yeah. Yeah, and so that's something that I refer to this as like a 30-year-old project. I don't want to talk about the right road, by the way, I have to get confused, but so why has that always been unpaved, right? And so part of that is because things need to go on the other side, and the road would have to come up for those services to go in anyway, right? And then part of that is it needs to be completely restructured to have the proper drainage on both sides. And so some of it is actually updated, but some of it will still need to be done, and I think that is part of the scope of the assessment that will happen next year. Is that correct, CEO?
Yeah, thank you, Madam Mayor. Yeah, you're talking 55th. I'm not sure if Councilor Poultry was talking
I should say that on the screen.
45th to 52nd or something like that, or.
I'm talking, Range Road 223 is the one back here, right?
Yeah.
Range Road 223, and between 45th and 52nd, that stretch right there, right?
Oh, sorry, I thought you were talking the one behind the high school by the track.
No, I'm talking this one back, this is self-storage.
Okay.
Well, then blank all that out.
That was good.
That was good info for you guys.
Talking about.
That is the right information. 55th, just. So that's good. So, yeah, the other, as far as 45th to 55th, I mean, that's, when we annexed the quarter section of land in there, that became within our boundaries. It never was before. It is, a fairly rough piece of road, I guess, sort of thing. So I guess that's why our director of operations has, talked to different people in terms of recrowning it, and feels that if it's recrowned properly and has the right drainage, et cetera, that probably could last, for another 10 years plus, as per that. Because initially when we did paving of our secondary access road to 25, there was talk at one point of going from 55th all the way down now to 25, but the extra cost to go from 45th to 55th made it, just not feasible at that time, so that's why it was chosen not to. And I'm not sure, exactly what that quote was off the top of my head, but, not enough that we have right in front of us, and certainly.
A couple million probably, so.
I think at that
Yeah,
time it was like
so-
$1 million a mile or something that they were saying.
Recrown was looked at as a pretty good viable route for now, just to buy another few years, 10 years.
Thank you for clarifying.
Councilor Atkins.
Thank you, Mayor Makina. Just to add a little bit to that too, I believe the Director of Operations was mentioning that because of the relationship with the county on that, the recrowning of that road would be cheaper because the county would be involved in that. So with kind of with the town taking over that portion of the road, the county would be kind of contracted to do the services, but they would be doing it at a reduced rate from my understanding.
Yeah, there was also some, the requirement to purchase land, right, in order to repair that road, and there was quite a bit of land that needed to be purchased, is my understanding that I recall.
Yeah.
And their prices were
storage place.
quite, yeah.
Storage place would have been affected by, widening it and reconstructing it, whatever too, so.
Yeah.
That was, so there were a lot of factors, but it was a big cost.
Yeah, there were a lot of factors to it, a lot of really costly factors in that decision.
Any additional questions or discussion? Councilor Poetry?
I couldn't find what was meant by west side of Spruce Drive between 51st and 50th. I don't know if I'm just being an idiot or not, because when I'm looking at Spruce Drive, it goes, oh, just on, that's next to the pub, right?
Yeah.
Okay, all right. So that is kind of rough, yeah.
Sorry, thanks, Mayor Martina. CEO might be able to speak to this more, but it sounds like it might be part of a bigger project, but this is something that kind of needs to be done now. So that's why it's just that smaller chunk.
And it's they're replacing it with tile ground and that, so the drainage is better to save the road prior to for the reconstruction of Spruce Drive at a later date.
Okay.
Any additional questions?
No, I guess, but just one last comment. I think it's really exciting that that the director of operations and the admin team is working hard on getting this study done, because I think it's going to be really cool to be part of shaping the projects for the following year and the rest of the term.
That's great. All right, I'm gonna call question. All in favor? That's carried. Great, thank you. Okay, and then we just have our minutes from committee of the whole. I don't know if anything came out of that. I don't think any
Sorry.
recommendations or anything.
Can I raise one more thing on
Go ahead,
minutes,
Councilor.
these minutes? I know, there's the item 3, future capital planning on here, and I think similar to what was brought up with the sustainability committee, there's kind of been some discussions, it seems like, of things that probably might be a great topic to talk about in committee of the whole, I think like recycling, right, or this outdoor drink, for example. And so that would be great if we could bring that into the committee of the whole as well, because I think like the risk management committee is not supposed to be talking about that stuff, right? So
Yeah.
That's all.
Sorry, and if I can just speak to that, Councillor Porter, we totally were down a rabbit hole, and it was just being recorded, it was being recorded in the minutes, right? And so that's where that came from.
No problem, I'm not.
But I do agree with you on that.
All right.
If I could just,
ahead,
something in
that'd
the minutes as well. I have, just to be fair, when we met with Staff Sergeant Newman, the items discussed, and the first one else is keeping RCMP. And, you know, I had just asked a question on how we might be able to support that. I'm not sure if that's something that we want in our minutes. As it reads as though he initiated that conversation, or it could be as read either or. And it's really important, I think, that they're not perceived as doing that with municipal councils. And I just have to say that I was one that initiated the conversation, just to say, you know, what can we do to support that? So if it's at all possible to request that we either remove that or we sort of reframe it in a way that reflects that council may have asked the question.
Councillor Evans?
Thank you. Just a thought on that. Do we want to just have a kind of general keeping our CMP and talking about Alberta provincial police, right? Just to kind of say that it's both sides being discussed, or are you talking more just that was driven by council?
Yeah, or even just say that council members ask questions on how to support keeping the RCMP, right? Something just to reflect that it wasn't the RCMP that was initiating that conversation, right? It's just such a political issue for them right now, right? And I just don't want the staff section drug into that.
Keep it on our shoulders.
Yeah, put it on my shoulders. Let me get drug into that one.
Is there anything else, since we're looking at those minutes, with a couple of things that people have, any other changes, or are we all good? Oh, Councilor Barnes?
I did want to ask one thing with the rising cost of living. One thing I did mention was the doubling of the carbon tax, and that's not included in here.
Oh, I apologize. What was that you were?
The doubling of the carbon tax under the rising cost of living, because that was something specific to Rachel Harder as a member of parliament.
All right.
Yeah. Can you ask us, can you let us know how many grants that we have coming forward to our community at this point? And how many we might be applying for in the new future? Both federally and provincially?
Does it have to do with the minutes?
Yeah, it sure does. Yeah, when I talk about being political. Yeah.
Okay. So just to clarify, Deputy Mayor Caldwell, are you suggesting that we don't include that in there?
I think that some of the items that were discussed during the course of that time doesn't stay as, I guess, unbiased or as political as we were required to be as municipal council. Right? Because we rely upon the federal government and the provincial government for funding to be our partners. And so sometimes when we provide information to other parties, it's where we have conversations, we have a requirement to remain unbiased and apolitical. Right, as council members. All right, so because we represent a constituency of people that are, are of all parties, and that's what we represent, right?
Council Flores?
Yeah, if I could just speak to that, and just in terms of the minutes and just how the conversation went, one of the things that came up was the cost of utilities and on that, the doubling of that, right? And so I apologize if I came across political, that was not my intent. However, I did want to note that it had in fact doubled to the rate ridership. And so, and I felt that was relevant as it's been very much talked about in our town.
Okay. So then, yeah, and I appreciate what you're saying. So I think that then we'll also put in there all of the other factors that cause our utilities to go up. And do a percentage breakdown, what's the carbon tax and what are all the other rider charges and the revenue generated by these different companies. I mean, we could do that. We could do a good solid breakdown that shows what the costs actually truly are and reflect it accurately that way.
And
Like I don't want it to be a perception that there's one item in there that's causing our utilities to go up because that's inaccurate information, right?
Council Flores?
And just so, again, just going off the minutes and what we talked about, I would be okay with just leaving it at this, if that's going to, keep the peace. However, I mean, I just wanted to bring it up because it was something that I had mentioned myself. And so that's where I was coming from.
Yeah.
And so I'm okay with leaving this as that because this was part of the discussion.
Yeah.
Thank you for your point.
Yeah, you bet. Thanks. And thank you for your understanding.
All right, thank you for that conversation. Okay, so, would someone like to make a motion to, accept the, go ahead.
I move that the committee minutes presented in this meeting are accepted.
Great, thank you. All right, so we're gonna move on now to the CAO report. And I'll turn it over to you, or did I miss it?
Oh, we just did
Yeah,
it.
I guess we'll vote on that.
Oh, I'm sorry. I guess so. Let's call the question, guys.
Sure, let's go for this.
All in favor? That's carried. Thank you. I forgot that part. I was just motoring ahead. So let's turn over to the CAO report, and over to you, CAO Hoda, to highlight anything that you want to know about.
Okay, thank you, Madam Mayor. So I won't touch on too much in there unless you have any questions. The only one I wanted to mention briefly was number 6 there, that in regards to, I did meet with the representatives of the Coalhurst Fire Department on February 22nd. And basically, as we talked about, we wanted to discuss possible internal restructuring of that department to see if that was a way to address our operations without a full-time position or contracting or regional support or whatever other options might be out there. So I think Interim Chief Sorsdahl even indicated tonight that, I mean, things have run pretty well since our previous fire chief moved on, and they felt that they could continue on that way. They felt that, different individuals have stepped up in different areas and are, doing things quite effectively. And we did talk a little bit about fire to emergency management too. So just to clarify, and I mean, I said, emergency management, obviously there is a proposal perhaps coming forward, as council is aware, in terms of, a regional dam and then how that may work moving forward, which I said is maybe a different scenario and something that does bear maybe a little closer looking at. We still would need, as indicated by that proposal, from what I understand, to have that local dam factor as well, or sub-dam or deputy dam, whatever it might be called. But in terms of the fire, they're, like I said, they're operating it quite effectively. They feel that they, balance the workload out. So what I kind of put forward to them then on that basis was, if you feel that that's where that's at, that perhaps you should come forward with an appointment for a permanent fire chief and a permanent deputy chief or chiefs. And then we talked a little bit about, some compensation for some of the extra duties that they might be doing. As opposed to, the base that they're, the fire chief gets a small base And obviously the individual members for on-call, standby, and actually when they're on physical call and their training nights and that type of stuff. But I said, if you're doing, more of the paperwork side of things in terms of the reporting or in terms of the payroll part of it, getting that to our payroll people or, accounts, that type of stuff for payment, as well as the reports that need to be done in terms of as indicated to the county, et cetera. That I said there probably would be some appetite to look at some compensation for that within the budgetary allotments that we do have, more than maybe what is there now. But I said, you feel, maybe you discuss it amongst yourselves and see what kind of a concept you may have to bring forward for our consideration of future scenarios. So, they, obviously didn't jump up and say, well, hey, we want X number of dollars more or anything to that effect. And in fact, sort of said, we're doing quite well, but I still said, well, you need to be appreciated and recognized for some of the things you're doing too, I feel. And I've commented, in the past, even as far as dam or whatever, depending on the scenario, previous dams were not really compensated very well for 24/7, 365, despite the fact that that's on-call duty they had. And, it is something that's pretty critical and something that perhaps does bear some sort of honorarium or recognition. And not lofty or anything to that effect, not still way cheaper than perhaps the paid emergency services position that we're looking at. But so I just wanted to say that that it went pretty well in conversation, I would say. Further to that, as indicated there, I had the CAO with the county wanted to have lunch with me to discuss what was talked about with Councilor Florence and myself not too long ago in terms of the possibility of their emergency service, regional service coordinator, the title is, to perhaps be stationed in Colhurst during the daytime to have a daytime discussion with the council. And I said, really, that's what we're, and on the basis of the discussion, I think that we do much more first before we move forward with anything in terms of fire in particular. And so just to clarify, fire emergency, I think they're somewhat different moving forward as we consider options.
Can I ask a question? It sounds as though, for Anne to go out for lunch with you on this, what's her hope for outcome with the proposal? So clearly there's some benefit to be had by the county in this proposal.
Thank you. Perhaps. It's similar to what I've said before, and I said that to Anne, and she's aware of it. The factor of what was there previously with the position that they had in their office at the time, and discussions with there, and I think was somewhat mentioned even with their interim chief tonight, into that, not really coming out and saying, there is a little bit of stigma to that, and as well, there is that autonomy that, we still, it's our department, it's a well-run department, it's recognized as one of the best. It was commented on again by, our discussion with the individuals here when I met, that not once, but twice, but 3 times, that Big Brother City of Lethbridge has called our crew to help or be on backup for them, which is almost for a little fire department to be called to cover a big department or assist a big department. It's more the other way. So, well, in terms of the capabilities and the dependable and reliable fire department that we do have with the equipment that the town has provided for them as well. And like I say, in the past, that was always the discussion was, somewhat of a control factor from the bigger brother, and certainly even though there was the department. So, this is an open meeting, so I'm trying to be politically correct here. But, it is a discussion that I think still needs to be carefully looked at.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So that's all I would have for my report, unless there's any other questions, so.
Does anyone else have any questions from the report? I'll go ahead, Councilor Florence.
I just had a question on number 3, the staffing, if there was any follow-up on that since the report.
Go ahead.
Yes, thank you, Deputy Mayor. I have 3, possibly 4 interviews for the development officer position lined up on Thursday. 14 applications. I did receive 16 applications for my director of corporate services. Sort of have weeded those down a little bit to about 7, just working with actually my former director of corporate services to have a quick look at him just to see what his thoughts are in terms of setting up 3 or 4 for that, and hope to get that set up next week as well. So it's moving, but it's a process.
Thank you. Any additional questions?
I had a question on the tax collection notes that you provided about 34 properties now at 1-year tax arrears. I guess, is that a concern? Should we be?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. No, I think when I gave the first update there that my director of corporate services had provided very similar numbers to a year ago. In fact, down in some cases. So, and generally, as I said, it's, the 1-year tax arrears. I mean, it's not a good sign if they keep going up and up and up sort of thing, but at the same time, it's pretty much on par and even slightly less in terms of that. And basically, a lot do end up sort of taking care of it, and we'll give updates here, I think, towards the end of March, and then once we get into the even the tax sales and the tax notifications as to where that is, so we'll get a better indication as to where it is. But yeah, generally, they're not alarmingly higher than previous years and lower in some of the categories that are here, so.
Thanks for that clarification.
Yes. And that's what I wanted to ask as well. So last year might not be a good measurement, but previous years prior to COVID, we're kind of on par with those.
Yeah, they're very similar. I mean, we've been fortunate in the sense that the numbers haven't drastically gone up, one way or the other, too badly. And we've always been fortunate enough that with the letters and with a little bit of communication and work with some of the players, we've been able to get some of the payments in check or plans, arrangements, and that type of stuff. So fairly fortunate actually. So.
Okay, thank you. Any additional questions? If not, let's move on to the Director of Operations report.
Okay, thank you, Madam Mayor. So again, the only item I'll really talk on unless there's other questions is number 4, and that's just in regards to the purchase of a mower. And basically talking with our Director of Operations as indicated in there, we have the 1991 John Deere, which is basically about 30 plus years old, kind of falling apart, kind of tough keeping together. So he has looked into, the sort of what he's looking for, I guess. The only option that really is there, I mean, Toro has a model that's similar, but this is a Toro, they do have a Toro one of the other ones they have. Hasn't held up as well as the John Deere. And some of the other companies' case and those types of ones don't have kind of the model that he's looking for. The John Deere one that he's got here has significantly more horsepower than the existing Toro he's got. It's got the 4-wheel drive option, and as indicated, the previous John Deere lasted 30 plus years. So the other problem is, as he's indicated, due to COVID, similar to a lot of stuff, there's not a lot of new things coming in. So talking with the company there, Western Tractor, he does have one that would be available, and so Kevin's kind of earmarked it on the basis that hopefully to get approval from council tonight. Otherwise, he probably will not be able to get one this year just due to supply and demand that's out there. So, and obviously, the need for it is, those things run very steady in the summer. We have a lot of park areas, you saw with the information that Kevin had put forward in his report previously. And this is, one that they do need the 4-wheel drive and they do need the extra horsepower because of the berms and because of some of those places where they have to cut the grass on, and that's why it's necessary to have this and the low capabilities and all that type of stuff as well. So I guess looking for approval tonight, as indicated in the motion that's on the table there. For this, it will be part of the 2022 final capital budget and would not affect taxes in the sense that it would be funded through the MSI capital component, of which we have those funds available for us unallocated at this point, as well as what's coming new. So.
Well, I'll make that motion if I could, please, and then I have a question.
Great. Could you just read it out? I know it's very long, but.
Yeah. I'll make the motion that the Council of Town of Colehurst hereby accepts a recommendation from administration for the purchase of a 2022 John Deere 1570, is that terrain cut?
Yeah.
Commercial front mower. As soon as we got the big blue line under it, it's difficult to read. With a 72-inch fast back commercial rear discharge deck, thank you. From Western Tractor Company, Inc. in Lethbridge, Alberta, for the amount of $48,740, including GST. Furthermore, that the purchase shall be included in the 2022 final capital budget, with funding to be provided from the Municipal Sustainability Initiative capital component.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Questions?
I did just have a question.
Yeah.
Did we not put something in our interim budget for the equipment for Public Works?
It was put in the interim, but not, we just wanted to make sure that you still were good with the purchase of that, because it wasn't necessarily clarified, it was something for sure, so we just wanted it definite that when it comes to final budget, you don't decide to cut it or anything to that effect. This is a done deal, we will get it and you'll have it for spring.
So this isn't news to us. There's already been a conversation that we need to replace 1991.
It was somewhat listed as an item in the
Yeah,
five-year
okay.
capital plan, but not really spelled out.
But now we're feeling the sense of urgency because of the supply demands.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Other questions? Councilor Ackerman?
Yeah, I'm just kind of curious, what is the expected life expectancy of a mower? Is it something that, I think the other one was from 91, so is this something that we can expect to last 20 plus years? I'm just more curious than anything.
I would suspect so on the basis of how these other ones have held up, the Toro held up, as you say, somewhat not as sturdy as what this one will be, so.
Might I suggest that like in future reports, that we have a little bit more information actually in the report regarding like the purchase cost as well, and kind of even some of that information too, like you had just said to us about like, this wasn't in the interim budget, just so that like, this doesn't seem like it's brand new as we're looking at it, because it's really hard to, like, just even looking at how it was written here, it's really hard to have the information to really even make that decision from until we got here and seeing that motion. That's just a piece that I would like to see in the future, I guess.
Sure.
Yeah.
Any further questions? All right, I'm gonna call question, all in favor? Great, that's carried, thank you. And then we have one more motion for this section. Would anyone like to?
Sorry,
I'm sorry.
I would like to ask a question from administration about the potential the street sweeping that's planned for 2022. I know, what is our typical notification plan for residents for when street sweeping is occurring?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Well, again, through our social media scenarios, we generally put it out, depending on when the town news is coming out, possibly in there, but definitely via our social media and website, that type of stuff is coming. And it's always subject to weather. I mean, it can be scheduled for at least 2 or 3 days, and if it rains too much, well, then it's canceled, and, that's the hard part in the sense of, and the other hard part is, as opposed to, say, the city where maybe they're doing a certain section on the west side or north, or whatever the case is. In our case, they kind of do the whole town, at the same time and within those 2 or 3 days. So to say, well, we're doing Sundance today and say the older part of town tomorrow, and it generally doesn't work that way. They sort of come in and they do their one run and then they kind of do another run, and again, depending on weather. So, but we try to notify as best we can, and we do put up some, I think, sandwich boards as well. I think they put those up in the past as well, so.
Great, I must not have seen them, but I think sandwich signs are great.
Thank you.
Sometimes I don't check my social media for 3 days.
Okay, continue. So I move that that the chief administrative officer report is hereby accepted as presented.
Any more discussion? All in favor? That's carried, great, thank you. So now we're going to move into council member reports and questions. So, for this one, I know in the past we've talked more about even internal committees. So let's talk more external things and then anything else if you have something you'd like to bring up. I would also like to propose that come, next council meeting, we actually change this so that we provide written reports, that will then be placed into the agenda as a part of a consent agenda. And then if you do have anything that you'd like to bring forward that's less report-like, more discussion, or things you'd like to highlight, that we kind of follow that flow as well, just to save on some time with the report component. So let's start out with Councillor Ackerman. If you have anything you'd like to cover.
So just kind of a quick summary of what I've been up to, the EOEP Municipal Finance course. We had the first and second session on that. First one was kind of on strategic planning and impact on municipal finance. The second section was on kind of on budgeting and how levels of service affect the bottom line on finances. Those were Wednesdays. We got 2 more coming up. Beyond that, there's just the Community Sustainability Enhancement Committee that we talked about, Risk Management Committee. I did have the Southborough Executive Board meeting yesterday. We were talking about the Economic Development Lethbridge Market Analysis. So that was that report that I emailed out to everyone. It's just kind of a public document, more for information than anything. We were also talking about the Southborough Economic Development Summit, which is March 30th in Carnegie, I guess. So just kind of what the agenda was for that. And then there's also going to be a planning day coming up where they're looking at projects and plans for the upcoming year, and then just kind of contract negotiations with the executive director. And then I did talk to them about the economic development, or the EDA summit in April 6th to 8th, and going back to them, they were able to cover that full $1,500. So I think I messaged everyone kind of ahead of time just to kind of get the vibe. And if somebody could put forward a motion to allow me to go to that conference, I believe the only thing that the town would have to pay at this point would be per diems for that. And that's from April 6th to 8th.
Great. I will make that motion for you to attend the.
It's the EDA Leader Summit, I believe it's called.
Okay. Any discussion on this item?
We had a good discussion last time.
Yes. Call the question, all in favor? That is carried, thank you. Councillor Ackerman, is that your report? You're good?
Yeah, I guess the only thing upcoming is just the EOEP finance course on March 2nd and 9th, and then probably have a summary for you guys afterwards.
Great, thank you. Councillor Flores, let's go to you.
Thank you, Mayor McKenna. I was busy scribbling these out today earlier. I should have probably done it a little bit sooner for taking. But yeah, so I thought it was going to be a really relaxing week with the week off, but it turns out it was quite busy. So got to meet for the first time with the Risk Management Committee, which I really enjoyed. And then on Wednesday, I actually had my first board meeting with the Community Futures. So with a late appointment to the board, I had kind of missed that council orientation, but I had a chance to meet with Diane Sinclair, the executive director. So she was kind enough to give me like a condensed version of that last month. And so, yeah, it was a really cool board meeting. They were very welcoming, very high functioning board, super cool to be a part of. And then actually on Friday, there was a board dinner for the past and present members to honor contributions and to celebrate Darlene's retirement. She is retiring. There has been a new executive director picked, but we gotta keep on the down low until it's official. So announcement coming. But yeah, so at this board dinner, it was a really lovely event, and the previous appointment to the board, Barbara Edgecombe Green, was there, so it's really nice. And then I did want to mention, and I'm sure you guys all know this, but I'm going to say it anyway. So what Community Futures does in some of their current projects right now, so it's a business improvement loan. And so these are for home-based, store-based, small, big businesses, and we actually pay the interest on those loans. So they can apply for loans to do business improvements, from very basic things like updating flooring to much larger projects. Another really cool project they have right now is the digital squad, and so they're offering free for local businesses. They connect you with social media marketers, and then they will actually do some free consulting and come up with a plan for social media marketing. And so that's all free for our residents. And so I was looking at our website just earlier, and I was going to email you about this. We have some of the info up, but not the digital squad stuff. So I did want to pass it off, and hopefully we can all be pushing this to our residents. Yeah, very cool stuff. Looking down at more of my scribbles, as Councillor Ackerman mentioned, The elected officials class, the two have been amazing so far. Just phenomenal learning. So really excited to go and do the third and fourth one, and we can definitely share some of that information with you guys. I did want to mention that I'm just super excited. The restrictions are lifted. I'm so excited for summer and all of our fun community events. And the last thing I wanted to mention, and this is something that I wasn't sure if I should pull up your report or not, but in regards to our Code Red, would it be possible at a future meeting to get like an update about that, just in regards to even what you were talking about in your report with the new Alberta-wide public system? And just, I'm wondering if it's still a useful tool for our community. And if maybe we could talk about that a little bit, I don't know.
Great, thank you. All right, Councilor Botry, let's go to you.
I did not have any meetings,
Good job.
except for committee of the whole, obviously. But I would like to have one question though. We have in our policy economic development committee, which is supposed to be working with Community Futures and I believe, right? And it's my understanding that that was kind of rolled into Community Sustainability Enhancement Committee. Is that correct? Is that
Culver's Economic Development
Yeah.
Committee. It was, right? They sort of rolled it all into one, which is kind of rough because it doesn't get the attention it needs, I think.
Yeah, I mean, at the time, I guess, we had economic development, we had, agriculture, we had something else, I guess, and it was just, at that point, it was felt that it kind of was grasping all of them all, like rolling it into the one, but.
Yeah.
I just love finding committees that are derelict.
Bringing them back to life. That's great.
I mean, at one point, for a little while, we did have a pretty good a committee that supported local businesses, and they were having monthly lunches, right? And then, I mean, it's certainly worth exploring in the future. Our hands are really full right now.
I had actually thoughts.
That's great. Deputy Mayor, would you like to give us your
Thank
report?
you. You know what, first I have to say, I'm so grateful that you're seeing the potential of Community Futures. I love that. I love that organization. Isn't it great?
It is. It's
You
amazing.
know, one of the other really cool things they do, and they do provide, if you're looking at putting together a business, they'll help you put together a business plan and do all these kinds of really neat things. So they're kind of like a non-profit organization that specializes in business, which is so cool.
Yep.
Yeah, I'm glad you're enjoying them. I'm missing them.
Thank you, Deputy
There you
Mayor.
go.
It's been awesome.
Yeah. Mine is pretty straightforward too. I was dealing with a chewed motor cord and was unable to make it to the Rec and Culture Committee, except for just to say goodbye at the end. So I just wanted to show my face, my harassed, hairy, dog rescue face. But I also had Green Acres Foundation, both the executive as well as the regular meeting. We had just a really, Charles Funk works with BMO Nesbitt, their new name. He provided just a really remarkable report on so he handles the investment portfolio for Green Acres Foundation, but he pops up once a year and does a really neat conversation about what are the trends in investments and what are interest rates doing, and what can we expect over the next year. And we also, we were exploring some of the policies that Green Acres Foundation has, and they put a lot of work into a lot of really solid, great policies. And, they sort of advised that if we wanted to explore any of them, that we were welcome to acknowledge sort of where they came from. So they're kind of open to sharing some of those. And then other than that, I think that was basically it for me.
Great, thank you.
Thanks.
So just a quick update from me. I attended the telephone conference, I suppose, with the Minister of Municipal Affairs. Talking a little bit about budget. With a lot of it actually dedicated to answering questions from mayors and reads. And so there were some conversations in there about, with MSI, what that looks like moving forward. And I kind of noticed that, or we're told that it was front loaded, and so ours this year has come down. The other thing that he talked about that I thought was kind of interesting was looking at, I think it's 25,000 beds for seniors housing within the next, I don't know how many years, 10 years, maybe like something like that. But it also really indicated that if there was something that we were interested in, that we should get in touch with the Minister of Seniors and Housing and propose some different ideas, because they are very open to hearing different ideas that are within the community. So that was something that was mentioned. The other thing that I did was I attended the Chinook Arch executive meeting, and that was actually held at their building on the north side. That's the first time that I've been there. Great time. And one of the things our CEO was about what in Colehurst and how we could better enhance services here. That he potentially come to one of our committees of the whole to talk a little bit more about what Chinook Arch does, and also look at other models that might fit our needs until or if we get an actual physical library in the community. So that is something that I would like to see moving forward into the future.
Just want to say.
So yeah, that's all that I have. Is that good?
Isn't Robin remarkable?
Yeah, he's great. I had a great time. It was really neat. They're all very lovely there, so it was a lot of fun. Okay, so we're gonna move on to correspondence, and what I'm gonna do with this right now is I'm gonna say, does anyone have any questions on any of the correspondence, or also would someone like to make a motion to approve correspondence?
I did just have a quick question, if I could, please.
Yeah.
And I mean, there's correspondence, but also on, was there any rationale given for the front loading of the MSI? So I mean, I understand, I get it. I understand the whole recovery from COVID piece, 1.2 billion that was recovered. But then it's also going to, the next 2 years, we're going to be almost cut in half in our MSI funding. So
Yeah.
So that's, so, and it's municipal sustainability initiative.
Yeah.
Right? So it just, did they sort of say, and I think, are we able to continue to just put those in reserve and have them hold us? So that we can spread it out over the 3 years if need be, or did they indicate that it needs to be used right now for COVID recovery, or was there any big conversation on it?
There was conversation on that, and I do believe in, don't quote me on this, we'll have to look this up for sure, but I do believe that like basically we can hold it for a longer period of time.
Mhm.
And then the reasoning that was given was more so that people could have that money to get some projects going that they had ready at that point in time. And that's why they front loaded it. So that was kind of the rationale that I had received. I don't know, see, if you have heard anything different.
That's pretty much exactly what it said, it was just to stimulate the economy in the midst of COVID and whatever, but if you had stuff to go, that's why they front loaded.
Yeah.
And gave you the fair warning that
Mhm.
this is how many years are left under MSI, then it's going to
3 years, yeah.
LGFF, which, will change a little bit too, so.
Yeah. Okay, good.
Any additional other questions on correspondence? I'm going to ask someone to make a motion to accept them. Great.
I move that the correspondence presented in this meeting hereby acknowledged and filed.
Thank you. Okay, so now we're going to move on to other business, starting with Peter.
On that.
Oh, good. Guys, I'm just missing that today. Okay, all in favor? That's carried. It's because I believe I said yes. So I just assumed. Okay, now we'll move on to other business. So starting out here with Peter Julian MP from New Westminster, Burnaby, regarding endorsement for Bill C-229. Would you like to speak to this at all? Yeah.
Thank you, Mayor. Basically, being similar to other letters that we've seen, this is just a private member's bill, and it's talking about banning symbols of hate. And again, he's just looking for support to try and get this through. So again, private member, probably information unless you choose to support it as per what he's requested.
Any discussion or would anyone like to say something? Okay, Councilor Butcher.
I mean, I'm all for banning symbols of hate, but I don't know that, we should be, is it our role as, I mean, every citizen can vote, can write to their own MP, right, if they support it, right? I don't know what, but I think he's trying to draw us into, make it more strong on his look, on this bill, but, yeah, I don't know. I'm a little bit torn on doing it on behalf of all the residents. Let's just put it that way.
Other thoughts? Councilor Ackerman?
Yeah, I can pretty much mimic what Councilor Poetry's saying. And I think we all agree that hate symbols are wrong, but at the same time, it's just kind of, is this the best interest of our use of time? Maybe as a letter writing, right? Because I guess you gotta ask the question, is where do you draw the line in writing letters, right? Because we could just get tied up in, oh, Coldhurst is one of those communities that write letters, and we spend half our council meetings just approving letters to be written, right?
Other thoughts?
We have neighbors that are exposed, and I'm trying to think of any symbols of hate that might have a direct impact in our community and in our neighborhood, in our region.
There's the guy who has the Confederate flag up, we used to.
And I think that when one level of government is reaching out to all levels of government to say it's sort of a collective good for all of our citizens here. I don't know that I would coin it a waste of our time to respond in support. That's a tough one to really think about that way. We do get a lot of requests to support different initiatives, but it's not unreasonable to expect the request for all levels of government to respond for something like this, right? Particularly when we live in a neighborhood where we do have people that perhaps, or our neighbors and people living in our community that may live with this.
So my question then is, anyone wanting to make a motion to write a letter or not?
I would be prepared to make that motion.
Sure.
Sorry, can I just say can I just make a suggestion, just kind of shifting gears here, is that we create our own policy?
Mhm.
Instead of writing a letter here, that we would.
Can you elaborate what you mean?
So they're asking for endorsement for a bill on banning hate symbols, so why don't we just write a policy on banning hate symbols?
Like,
In Coldhurst, right? And so it's just more of like a local response.
see how to, I'm curious how that would go, considering like that would have to be policed or something would have to do with that, like what are the ramifications of that potentially?
Yeah, I mean, obviously, you see the hate symbols in Calgary's in different places or whatever, and but it becomes a criminal matter. I mean, obviously, from that perspective. So for us to have our policy and to have any more effect than it does on the national scale already or in the Criminal Code Act, I'm not sure that it would carry that much more weight other than it's a statement that the town has a policy regarding that. But as far as enforceability and that type of stuff, I think the provisions are there already. This individual here, like I say, it's a private member's bill, so it's not even being discussed at the full, say, political party in power, I guess, or political power in opposition. It's, a private member's bill trying to gain support to come up with some kind of legislation over and above what's there already in the Criminal Code Act. So,
So it's just a question of writing the name of our municipality in our number of residents.
Councilor Poetry?
I mean, when they first brought in the hate speech laws in Canada, I always wonder, are they going to be upheld well, I guess, let's say? Because I know there was a lot of concern at that time that they would be used against whoever they wanted to shut down, right? Whether it was considered hate or not, it was whoever. Because the way it works is you just report it as hate speech and then they just prosecute you. Whether or not it is hate speech or not, you still get prosecuted, right? So that was the concern, I believe, hate speech. And so I think it's not been used the way maybe we feared it was gonna be used, right? I mean, the hate speech laws do cover publications, so I don't know if flying counts for publications anyway, I don't necessarily, I don't know. I feel like we're getting to things that we don't need to talk about. It's kind of what's causing, so, Councillor Atkins was saying.
And I think really, there's certain things that, I mean, I would agree if there was a request that we get actively engaged in a campaign, we have limited resources in the community of our size. But when it's just requesting that we just make a statement that says that this community of this many, with this population, support a bill that bans hate symbols. And just like hate speech, I mean, there are universal symbols that are being identified and recognized. It's not gonna be somebody like saying, I think that's a hateful sign and I want it gone, kind of thing.
Councillor Florence?
Thank you, Mayor Martina. I just kind of, what CAO Ottawa is saying is there's already stuff in place. So I wonder if this is some guy trying to get more political clout too. Like, is it something, I mean, if it's already in place and this independent person is doing it, I mean, is he doing it for his own gain, right? Political gain?
It's, there's always that fear, and I think that's a common thing that people do. I can't imagine what it takes from us, though, to just say that we do support this. I mean, who doesn't? Particularly in the neighborhood that we live in, right?
I think that for myself, this is absolutely, like, totally agree with, banning the symbols of hate and things like that.
Yeah.
I guess it's one of those things kind of, I think that Councillor Ackerman's kind of alluded to as well, is we get so many of these things. When do we involve ourselves and when do we not? Regardless, like, I think that that's kind of part of our problem, is that we don't really know. That component is just kind of done on our general overall feelings, but really with no guiding principle as to when we could do something or not. And I don't know if we could have that, quite honestly. Councillor Country?
Just to maybe put a context to here in Alberta, we have Alberta Human Rights Act, which prohibits hate signs, notices, publications, and statements. So, I believe in Alberta, we're already covered for that type of, whether or not it's enforced or not is the next question, right? But
And I think that might be what we're seeing, is they're trying to get some teeth to it. Creating federal, then it becomes a federal crime, and then there's teeth and there can be charges, right?
Yeah.
Then it's not the sheriffs, it's not bylaw officers, it's police, right?
Deputy Mayor, would you still like to make a motion, or are you not?
I would
You would?
like to make that motion.
Can you say what you would like the motion to be, please?
That we, let's see, that the town of Colehurst provide support and public endorsement to urge the federal government and all entities to support Bill C-229, banning symbols of hate act.
Is there any further discussion?
Can I just make a friendly amendment?
Sure.
To not let it be to all MPs, but just to the one. Are we sending it to all MPs or just back to the?
Okay, so just that we send our support and public endorsement. Okay. To urge maybe just all members of government then.
To endorse MP Peter Julian's private numbers bill C-2229.
Yeah, see 229, and then just identify what that bill is, banning symbols of hate act.
Any,
But I would request that we provide support and endorsement. And endorsement, behind support, just and endorsement. So basically what we're saying is on behalf of the town of Colehurst. Yeah, banning symbols of hate act.
any further discussion? All right, I'll call the question. All in favor? Great, opposed? The motion is defeated. Okay, all right, moving on. So let's move on now to Alberta Seniors and Housing, regarding their affordable housing needs assessment. CEO Wada, I'll turn this over to you.
Okay, thank you, Madam Mayor. So again, we're holding a virtual engagement session to discuss affordable housing needs in your community as well as barriers, difficulties, that type of stuff. They want to know if someone is available to attend by basically March 3rd, so just putting it forward for, I guess, approval of someone or someones from council if you're interested in perhaps listening to that session, providing some participation.
This is on March 8th, right? This is-
I would be very interested in attending that, if I could receive approval.
Absolutely. I will make that motion. So I move that Deputy Mayor Caldwell, does anyone else want to go?
I'm interested in it too as well.
You're interested? So I'll move that Deputy Mayor Caldwell and Councilor Potry are hereby authorized to attend a virtual engagement session regarding affordable housing needs assessment on March 8th, 2022. Any discussion? Call question, all in favor? That is carried. Great, thank you. Okay, now we're gonna move on to ORS registration form for council orientation. Back to you, CEO Huda.
Okay, thank you, Madam Mayor. So again, this was the rescheduled orientation that they had planned for January. They've now moved it to March 24th, taking place at the Coastal Hotel in Lethbridge. As indicated there, due to manage numbers, capping it to 150 participants. And they do have a couple of choices. There's an afternoon session and an evening session, as well as a dinner before or after the session. So just looking for, again, I guess approval for whoever is available and interested to attend, and I guess for the sake of the registration form, what you would attend.
Great. Councilor Flores?
I was like, do I move it or ask the question first? I'll move it first and then I'll ask the question.
Okay.
Okay, so, well, actually, no, I can't. I'm gonna ask the question first. Are we all expected to go to this?
Not expected. I mean, it's a council orientation in terms of the ORSC, I guess,
Services.
the services they provide. So
This was the one that we had set up for us originally, right? That has been rescheduled?
well, it was still scheduled for all their
Okay.
municipalities back in January.
This is the same thing that- from that, okay.
And so, yeah, I don't think it's just about what ORSC, it's also an overview of planning in your community and land use and all that kind of information, right?
Yeah, we're still their services. and stuff.
Yeah, and so I think there's a lot of good learning, I think, and I thought the thought was that all council was going to try to attend, well, in January, that was the goal.
That's what we sort of talked about then, but yeah, so planning, subdivision, all that type of stuff, what the village does.
All right, so I guess I'll just ask the question, but then you can make a motion.
Okay, sure.
Is anybody not going to be able to attend?
It's on St. Patrick's Day, but you know what,
Is it?
I'm on MSBA, so I'm
Isn't
gonna
it-
forego St. Patrick's Day to do this one.
It's on the 24th.
Well, I thought it said March 17th.
It says the 24th on the registration form, so which date is it?
Oh, register by March.
Yeah.
Oh, I apologize, okay, I don't even have a conflict, and I have to forego.
Go ahead.
So the only thing that I have is I have Southborough later that evening, so I'd have to go back again.
Okay. I'm not available until the evening. And so I could do dinner and evening as long as probably.
I would like to do that one as well, please.
Yeah, me too.
And Councilor Florence, which time works best for you?
I can do either, actually. I just need to know.
Well, you decide what you want to do.
I can do dinner and evening too. Or, well, no, you know what, I'll just do afternoon. I don't wanna do dinner.
You know, dinner and evening might be a nice way to network with our neighbors though.
Well, if, I'm trying to be cognizant of like, we shouldn't all do it, so I don't wanna like fill up, or can we just go for it? Just go for it? Okay.
Because their registration is such that it's, they can't accommodate, then let us know. If you'd
Yeah.
like to look into the alternate one.
Yeah, sounds good.
Don't want to do the dinner, just if you have that time.
Yeah, just that afternoon.
Yeah, just the afternoon for me.
So I have Ackerman's and Florence for afternoon only, and the other 3, 4.
Well, I'll do dinner and evening too, so please. And then I will also make a motion. If you want, or did you want to make that?
No,
motion?
you start.
Thanks, Mayor Martina. I move that all council are hereby authorized to attend Old Man Regional Services Commission Council Orientation in Lethbridge on March 24th, 2022.
Okay, any discussion? All in favor? That is carried. Great. Okay, so now we're gonna move on to Alberta Northwest, I think, Command, Royal Canadian Legion regarding military service recognition book ad. Turn this over to you.
Yeah, thank you, Madam Mayor. So basically, it's a book, as indicated there, that's put on for the region there, Alberta Northwest Territories. Council have in the past put an ad in this book. We did get a copy that comes to the town, and I believe goes to the Legion as well. We've generally done the 1/10 page ad. We now do color because we do have a color logo, or have the last year or two. So it is a cost of $375. It's optional. I mean, it's, they always give you their sales pitch that it's a good thing, and honor your veterans, et cetera, et cetera. I know it started out initially maybe that we do it 1 year, but we've kind of kept it going almost, it seems like, every year. But again, it's brought forward each year for council's discretion and decision, I guess.
So can I ask, like I can't actually click on the link to see what these books look like. What is like, so other municipalities must be putting their stuff in here as well?
Yeah, it's a book about that thick. I mean,
Okay.
it does have stories of different veterans in it.
Okay,
And then there's obviously ads from, that's how they basically put the book out, because of the ads of their municipalities, as well as I think even some businesses and that type of stuff. So.
can I just ask another question regarding like, so I know with at our previous meeting or a couple meetings ago, we had the request for, what was it, some farm safety or whatever it was. Like, how many of these types of things do we get per year? Because I think they're all lovely things, but again, not knowing like how many come in a year, like, do you know what I mean?
There can be a fair bit. I mean,
Okay,
we, again, haven't traditionally done a whole pile.
okay,
of them. Even as far as advertising, local papers, I mean, we do put an ad generally in the Sunny South for, Fire Week, for Remembrance Day, for Canada Day. We do put an ad for grad, usually sponsor a kid, sort of an ad, so those types of things. But we don't generally advertise too extensively in too many things, so, or sponsor too many of the other things, because of the fact that, it's looked at as taxpayers' dollars, and individually, if people want to support whatever the situation is, then maybe personally do it yourself, as opposed to, spending taxpayers' dollars on that type of stuff, so.
And I think one of the things, if I might, one of the thought processes when we started supporting this is, it is a fundraiser as well, right, for the Legion. And it was just sort of to say, for that small financial donation that we do, the ad that we put in, it just sort of says we support our local Legion and our local veterans was what right? That's sort of what the ad says, something to that effect.
Yeah, I mean, again, just to clarify, it's not a book that any of this money goes to the local Legion here. It's as indicated, the Alberta Northwest Territories Command region, so.
Yeah.
So it's not like you're giving it to the Legion here.
No.
So just to clarify that. So.
But if a member of the Legion requires additional supports, they take it from sort of a fund, do they not? Do they not hold funds for very specific things for
Legion as
veterans?
a whole,
Yeah,
not a specific legion. It
no,
all
so
goes to
this command, so would this command be that?
It would be part of it.
Okay,
There's even
okay,
bigger than that, so,
okay.
but the money all goes to helping and supporting vets and their families.
Yeah, thank you for that. That's what my understanding was, is that's what we.
So anyone, go ahead, Councilor.
I love that they say the keepers of remembrance in here, and I think it's so cool to be printing out these chunks of history every year. I mean, it's a small amount of money, I would support this.
Do you want to make a motion?
I will make a motion. Where is it? Okay, move that the council of the town of Colhurst hereby authorize the purchase of a tenth of a page of a color ad in the Royal Canadian Legion Military Service Recognition Book for the price of $375, including GST.
Any further discussion? All in favor? That's carried. One thing I will note is if that is the ad that they're going to run, it's very pixelated, so maybe we just want to make sure that they have the most up-to-date high-res graphic, because it does look a little pixely there.
Chopped off.
Yeah, well, and like when you look at it, it's not very clear.
Give us better logo or whatever it's
Yeah.
called, I guess, branding.
564 pages was the last year.
Cool. Okay, the next thing that we've got here is from the Minister of Municipal Affairs regarding the 2022 MSI extension amending memorandum of agreement. So, yeah, go ahead.
Okay, thank you, Madam Mayor. So yes, basically as the letter indicates there, in order to receive your funding for 22-23, they've amended the MSI agreement, moving ahead to be replaced with the local government fiscal framework. And as a result, in order to receive your funding, you must sign this attached agreement, which I guess is pretty self-explanatory.
Do it or else.
So I hope you pass this one.
I don't know.
Who'd like to make this
I
motion?
will make that motion.
Go ahead.
I move that Mayor Montina and Chief Administrative Officer Hoda are hereby authorized to enter into a 2022 Municipal Sustainability Initiative extension, amending memorandum of agreement between Her Majesty the Queen and the right of the province of Alberta as represented by the Minister of Municipal Affairs in the town of Colhurst in accordance with the terms and conditions as contained in the agreement.
That's a good one. Any discussion? All in favor? That's carried. Thank you. Okay, moving on to the council communication plan. So I'm just going to speak to this one here. And so I did send this to you all as a way to kind of get started with some communications. Just wanted to bring a couple things forward, and then if you guys have any potential ideas for change or things like that. What we have on here, so this was really looking at the policy on communications and social media and how we could work that kind of with this. One of the things that I started thinking about when we're looking at this is, we know that social media is here to stay, and I think we need to work with it and just figure out what that looks like for us. So in saying that, my suggestion is that we utilize the Town of Colhurst Facebook page rather than creating a new page for council. I believe that everything should be coming through that page. And then as individuals, if you have an individual council page or something like that, you're more than welcome to use that to complement the communications. But really looking at the Town of Colhurst Facebook page as more of that official, as well as the website as being more of the official, the source of truth. I suppose you could kind of look at it from that point of view. And then also looking at just a little bit of a communication schedule that we would do on a monthly basis that ranges from a variety of different things, including not only online and social media, but also looking at the town news website and the digital sign too, if we choose to go down that path. So these are just some things that I thought that we could kind of look at to get started. And my next thought based on this was that if we like this kind of format, what we could do is actually start creating more of a communication schedule. And so just an example, Councillor Florence, as you were talking about the digital squad component, I thought that might be a really great thing that you could potentially do a deep dive into on social media and talk more about that. And have that coming more from the Town of Colhurst Facebook page as well as the website to kind of bring some life to that if that's something you're really interested in. We can start building that out a little bit more. And so if we were to do this, it would kind of take us on a month. These are generally what we'd see from council. This does not look at the communications that would be coming from the town on town-related things. This is solely from our perspective on the things that we are looking at. So just a couple of other things that I wanted to bring forward were some questions for discussion regarding how do we want to respond to concerns on social media and how do we respond to inquiries? And so I have some thoughts around that, but wanted to just open this up for discussion a little bit because I think that we are seeing stuff like that and knowing that we need to figure out how we're going to move that forward as a collective, I think would be really, really great. So let's start out with any questions, concerns, thoughts generally overall, and then we can talk a little bit more about social media. Go ahead, Councilor Atkins.
Thank you. I just think that this is a great idea. I think that having kind of a schedule for that really helps. Yeah, I just think that if we use this properly, it's a good way to engage with the community and have everyone as an individual still speaking towards the community, so it doesn't seem like it's just one or two people doing it. But as long as we are mindful of the message that we're presenting, maybe even running the post by the group just to see if there's anything that stands out to anyone, just to kind of have that, just to make sure that the messages that we are putting out kind of reflect the collective, right? Because if we're doing it as an official message from town, we should be all on the same page with it, right? If there's something that needs to be tweaked, I think that we should be able to provide that feedback, but still let the individual speak on the topic that they want to speak about.
That's great, thank you. Councilor Potry, we'll go to you, Deputy Mayor.
Thanks, Your Worship.
Thank you for throwing that out there.
I was, if you're doing like I think, yeah, just, you want to keep it on topic that is safe. If you're doing a live, for example, I mean, things you might end up saying something that might not be totally aligned with council. I think it's just might inevitably happen. Or something that's incorrect, right? It's just, we're never perfect. So I wondered if we could just come up with a disclaimer that we just run at the beginning of every kind of Facebook Live or event that we read or we post it somewhere that just, you know, kind of like a interviews where opinions are those of the people who here do not represent the entire town kind of thing, right? So I wonder if that's just a safe way to try and protect ourselves on that in case something does come up. We just end up saying the wrong thing. I try to say the right things. I know all of you do too, but I would hate that if somebody got plastered or something that.
I think that's a really great point. You know, especially as we're looking at like some of the items that I kind of put in there, like, you know, like whether it's community facing or whatever. I think that like when I was starting to think about this from my own perspective, I was looking at that in a sense of if there's something that as a council that we put out there that's public, that this is our stance on whatever this may be, then I think that there's nothing wrong with saying that because we've decided that together, right? But if it's something where we have not taken a stance on it, I think that that's where you really have to think about it from your opinion and what that can look like and how we best represent that. And so I think that we just need to kind of, I think, figure out what those lines look like there too, in terms of, you know, like how we do that. And so I'm actually starting to like look at, I guess, a little bit more of like the processes behind like the approval and stuff like that. As you'll notice, like when I did send you out my message from the mayor, so that's something that you all would see. And so I think if we could develop some type of process, like you were kind of mentioning, Councilor Atkins, where we could have that approval or that, you know, that type of thing. Even I guess I was kind of thinking about with the lives, if it's something similar to kind of like what I was doing when I was doing the lives, of having that outline, and then you could run that by people, say like, generally this is what I'm going to talk about, etc. So then there's some type of planning, right? That could potentially happen. Then I think that we could very much create that to help us do those types of things. Deputy Mayor, did you have something?
You know what, that's exactly what I was gonna talk about, like
Okay.
that, like having a Facebook Live event with a counselor speaking about a specific item on our Town of Colhurst official Facebook page is kind of, that is saying that person's information is speaking on behalf of council. So that makes it a little bit tough, right? Perhaps, and I was kind of thinking, well, how can we manage it? So if we had a schedule that was set up and we had, okay, well, I'd really like to talk about this, and we have a little bit of a schedule set out, and that way, maybe we can ask questions in advance.
Mhm.
Have people, have the questions brought forward in advance before we go live with it.
Yeah, that.
Something
that's
to that, yeah, and then council, we can, in one of our, I don't know, our communication meetings or
Yep.
whatever, we can sort of,
Or just even on
Figure that stuff out.
on Teams, like.
on Teams, yeah, we can just talk
Lindsay's able
about,
to share that, right?
right? So I mean, this is like the town's official place, and yeah, and I mean, we all have our own ways that we want to communicate, but I agree with Jesse, like, you guys see me out here, I mean, I know that we're recording and I'm, talking about my dog eating my modem cord and, all over the place, so. So you're right, I mean, we're all gonna have our own thoughts on things.
Yeah, I wonder if we can just structure that a little bit more, so like you're saying, so that if we are soliciting questions from the community beforehand, and then we can almost go through them and kind of look at what the answers potentially
Yeah.
could be, and just have some ideas.
And have really, really clear boundaries. Like if people wanna ask questions about why their garbage was not picked up on this day or when it's picked up, or, really clear operational things, then we need to just stay away from that stuff.
Yeah.
We have zero reason to be communicating with our public about operations,
Absolutely.
right?
Councilor Florence.
Can we just not do lives? Like, would that just be eliminating the problem? Like, I mean, just doing pre-recorded videos,
Absolutely.
right? I mean, with that,
I think we should, what I would suggest is that maybe we get rid of the lives for now. I would like to see us potentially going down that road into the future, but maybe we just do more of the pre-recorded videos at this point in time. So if it's your turn, you have the option if you want to write something, if you want to do a pre-recorded video, whatever it may be, but then I think that has to still go through that approval process before it's actually put out there. And I think that means with us, but also I sent my mayor's message through RK as well, just to make sure that it was in line with all of that stuff as well. So that, I think that makes a lot of sense to do that at this point. It kind of eliminates and a little bit of baby steps too.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
and I love how authentic lives are, and I love that you get that like two-way communication, and so, I mean, yeah, so saying that with a little bit of, but.
I would love to do it, I would love to do it live.
And they were so fun when we were doing our elections, they really are. But when you're running for election, it's so much different than when you speak as the council.
I will say, however, though, that like on individual counselor pages, those are your own individual pages, right? And I think that that's very much where you as an individual can say that you represent yourself. And so that's not coming from the source of the town, but it's still allowing you to connect with people, as you see fit. And, if you want to run stuff like that by people, I think that that's great too. We can bounce ideas off of each other. One other thing that I've actually requested from CA Howda is for our next committee of the whole, I'd like to do just even a little session on communications and best practices for social media, just so that you have some resources on what that could look like. And also as you're starting to write your stuff, that you have a little bit of, some information. I have one of those presentations kind of canned already that I can, adopt for us, and then send it out to the world to go do all the communications, so. CA Howda, I just wanted to check in with you. Is there anything on here that's of concern to you?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I guess the biggest thing is, as you're saying, I mean, as long as, I think it's good that you're directing everything through the town's Facebook page, website as the official page, because that's something that we definitely tried to, get across in the past, is that that's where the official information should come from and should be directed to. The other thing I guess you've indicated that, and I think as we've said it before, it's great to have your individual pages, but again, my caution is just there too. Again, be careful with, how you're coming across in terms of the message that you're delivering. Yes, you can have your opinion and you may be contrary to the decision that was made tonight, which is fine. It doesn't mean that you have to say, I agree with the decision, and whatever. You can say, I was opposed to the decision, but at the end of the day, the decision that was made is still the decision of the town, and you have to accept that is the democratic process and the decision that was made. Your comments regarding live, I guess, I know that potentially, town halls, when we've done those in the past, if we have one or two of those a year, there's the opportunity in a sense for live, spur of the moment, people are asking questions and, individually or collectively, you can provide answers. Obviously, town halls we've discussed a little bit in previous discussions, have been done different ways in the past to where they were more presentation based and people didn't ask questions, to where more recently we've done it where it was basically, there wasn't a real set agenda. It was, council's here, what would you like to talk about in a sense? So, which, and not necessarily would you have all the answers, obviously, because depending on the question, you're getting feedback, and from there, you may come back to a committee of the whole and then provide an answer via one of these methods back to the public in terms of some of the questions that might be asked. So, and again, as far as, message from the mayor, that type of stuff, previously, many years ago, the mayor did do a message in town news pretty much on a monthly basis. And, through COVID, the previous mayor did a couple of updates to the town, but certainly I think that's a good thing to do on a basis, and choose to rotate it. I think that's a good thing, gives the other members the opportunity as well to have some limelight, I guess we want to call it. And yeah, other than that, the key is like keeping to the official and then being careful with the stuff that is said. And I think Councilor Poultry's comment about a disclaimer is probably a good thing to say. You see that on a number of TV shows and different reports and stuff that have that disclaimer on there. So whether that's legally done so that you have it, done and said in the right way, similar to treaty land acknowledgement that you are saying, the right description, maybe something we may want to look at as well.
That's a great point. Is that something that you would suggest that we do, is get like more of a legal one done?
I'm just suggesting that it might be, just so that I say that the views being expressed via this are not reflective of how I think I might want to say it. I'm just trying to think of, you hear on certain things or whatever, so. And just, a quick discussion with legal just to see, is this good enough for you to cover that? Yeah, again, it's protection for, your individually as well as the town. And go from there, so.
So can I make a motion that you contact legal about that and find us something to say? You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, I'll touch base with our
Okay.
legal person, town solicitor, and see what she's got to say.
Do you want me to make a motion for that?
No, I'll do it.
Okay, I rescind my motion.
I do have to make mention, if I could.
Yeah.
Mayor Montina, and that's something that CAO didn't mention. I think when we're looking at doing these kinds of things, when we're doing official communication, if we are looking at having it vetted by CAO, they have to be aware of resources too, right? We understand right now that there's a limitation on staff right now, and so, his plate is really full. And so whatever communication that we are looking at doing, if we're either vetting it through him or if we're requesting his assistance in providing that information, that we have to be really conscious right now of what kind of time he has and, what resources he has available for that, right?
That's a great point. So how would you like to handle that? Is it something that you would like to see everything that's coming through, or what does that look like from your end?
I guess just to see it prior to going out, in case all of a sudden you do get the phone calls or you get the emails or something in terms of it, is always a good thing. In terms of the one that you recently just sent, it wasn't extensive. It wasn't like 16 pages or 40 pages that we had to read. It was, that page, fairly, not really too in-depth in terms of legalities or stuff that was discussed with engineers, legal, or projects that are ongoing. So I guess it depends on the nature of it, but a quick read at least, just to say, hey, maybe this is something that raises a flag or maybe isn't 100% correct. And like I say, just for the simple fact of knowing what is going out there before it's out there, definitely is good. So at least they can say, wow, this was, Mayor Montina's statement. I am aware of it. And, may direct them back to you for further clarification or discussion if they want to go that way, so.
Yeah, so maybe when we have someone speak to us about communications and social media, maybe it's a good time to pull out our council code of conduct as well. And read through some of that, like, because there's some stuff in there about communicating with the public and that kind of stuff, right? And I mean, honestly, trust me, I'm the one that made a comment on Facebook that was, and my language caused it to be misconstrued as in a way that I had no intention of that being the case. And so that's why I just speak with caution in all of this, right?
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's a good point, and we can definitely bring that forward.
Yeah. It's ridiculous how much work has to go into be able to just have conversations at our community.
I guess, go ahead.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. And I guess just further to that, I guess the thing is, obviously with communication via email or Facebook, those types of things, as was indicated, I mean, it is a permanent record.
Yeah.
It's not like a verbal thing where you can argue that that's not what I said. I mean, it's there. And we find that, last one, I can certainly comment on that, even emails that we receive or that we may send. An email is an email, and sometimes it's not what you intended to say, but somebody can take it as that very easily. And it does ruffle your feathers depending on if you're on the receiving end or the giving end sort of thing. I didn't mean that, but I see how you got that, or I don't see, but so it's.
I guess my thought on that too is just that we hope that doesn't happen, but I think that we have to dive into this area and really start moving forward, because this is the way of now. And so I think that we have to just be very cognizant of those things, and hopefully by putting some processes in place where we can vet things and look at them a little bit differently. And we likely are going to make a mistake or two, but I think that's for me, that's very much I'm going to assume that my council colleagues are not going to do that on purpose, and that we then from there, unless you're being very egregious, we stand together and we correct it.
But I guess sorry.
Oh, I'm just chuckling over here because every email I send, the contractor can sue me for. So I'm living in that world every day.
Yeah.
Even if you, so our insurers say, even if you say, oh, well, that's you use a descriptor like that's nearly right or something like that. Well, what do you mean that's nearly right? That means it's not always right. If you use just language like that, you get sued. So,
super intimidating.
anyway, yeah.
But I guess the points we're kind of raising really speaks to it's not a simple matter as a council to get out there and just start having official communications with the town and stuff, right? I mean, and this is probably why we're at ground zero trying to figure this stuff out right now, right? So it's good. We'll get great processes because I agree. This is the way of the future. We have to move in this direction. We have to do this. And we just have to be smart.
Yeah, I would say that this is not something that can easily be done off the side of a desk. There is strategy and there's things that have to kind of go into this. I think that we can start and definitely see how it goes. But yeah, I'm excited for this. I think this is something that we've talked a lot about, and it's kind of, I think, the point now to start and
the community's asking.
Yeah.
The community is asking for this kind of engagement, right? This was really loud and clear in this election, right? That's what they want.
So I do have those 2 points in there about how do we want to respond to concerns on social media and inquiries. What I'm suggesting now is that maybe we leave that for our committee of the whole discussion for next week. And we can kind of look at social media a little bit more so and say what does this look like for us? And in the time being, I might look at some more types of processes and things like that I might bring back for that. And we can have a further conversation if what you're feeling on here outside of the lives is fairly representative, I guess, of where we want to go. Great. Okay, any other questions on this for now? Are we good?
Yeah, one final comment is just with this being policy, I mean, we can always look at making changes down the road if we have to, right? So I think it's better to kind of get going on it and then see how it kind of pans out and adjust it accordingly, right? If we're finding something's not working, just pull it back and adjust it, go from there.
That's great. Thank you. Okay, so we're gonna move on now to our last agenda item, which is the Community Engagement and Strategic Alignment Committee terms of reference. So you have those in front of you, or in your package. And so this was something that we had talked about developing at that one committee meeting that we had. So these are just draft terms of reference based off of a little bit about what we talked about. And I guess that right now I am opening up the floor to anyone who has any comments, or if anyone would like to make a motion or have more of a discussion around this item. All right, nobody started. I will start. So one discussion that CAO and I actually had regarding this was that this could potentially be something that we do on a regular committee of the whole, where we really look at these different items that are on here. And so rather than having an additional meeting time, what we could consider doing is just having a designated committee of the whole night. Maybe it's quarterly, maybe it's whatever we choose on the frequency. And then we go over these types of things that are written within here. There could also be potentially, if we don't want to do that, we could look at potentially like adopting these terms of reference and maybe having this potentially in place of a committee of the whole. Are okay with that potentially? That could happen, right? Where we could, if we adopted this, we could just like not call it committee of the whole, we could call it this. That make?
Yeah, I mean, similar to, as I said, we have the finance committee, which is generally for budget or for audit, but when we do it, it's committee of the whole or council anyway, so
Yeah.
it's kind of the same.
So those are just some things to kind of think about. Councillor Ackermans.
Yeah, just kind of, if we're looking for a designated time for it, I'd almost look at maybe like the 5th Tuesday of the month, because that happens periodically. And then you'd still have your 2 committee of the whole meetings per month, and you'd still have your 2 council meetings per month, but I think there'd be probably 3 or 4 per year approximately.
Is there be one in March? Maybe. Then there wouldn't be one until November. So that'd be
I guess it depends on
pretty
cost
basic.
and availability, but
So there's 3, it looks like there's 3 in 2022.
Can I ask though, if we were looking at when we're setting up our meeting times and frequency of meetings, what's our hope for outcome by meeting this committee? What are we hoping to achieve
At this actual, with this committee?
with this committee? Yeah.
I guess for myself, I was very much seeing this somewhat similar. I guess you could liken it almost to like the executive committee of a board, in a sense of that it's looking after not only the health of how things are running, you know, like when we're talking about us and how we're functioning as a team, but also looking at like how is this aligning to how doing kind of, I guess, a little bit of reflection and a self-check to say like how is what we're doing actually aligning to where we say we want to go. So it's kind of that very deliberate and intentional time where we do that. And also looking at, again, more of that engagement framework. So to say like, this is how we're doing that. What are we doing for this quarter? How have we done that? How do we look back? What do we do for next quarter? And so rather than, because I feel like these are types of items that I think have really great value, but because they're not something that's always imminent and right in our face, if something comes up that's more important, these things can kind of get forgotten. And so that was my intention behind this, was that we'll be looking at engagement, the health of us, and also making sure that we're aligning with our actual actions.
Perfect, thank you. So what you just described, is it worth 3 meetings a year? Or 4 meetings a year? Or is it worth more attention? Because if we're looking at creating an engagement framework, and we're kind of saying that our strategic plan, we're really hoping this year that we're going to have community engagement within that strategic plan.
Yeah.
So we might have to sort of determine that maybe our strategic plan is going to be kind of piecemealed with a little bit of community engagement, but that may not be a part of this framework, right?
That's a good point.
Like if we're planning on, like we're basically saying that we're going to give it the throwaway Tuesdays, and I apologize, I don't mean to say it that way. But you know, those extra Tuesdays that we have throughout the year, and we're saying that that's the attention that we're going to give this. But we've all sort of identified that we
that's a great idea.
see this is kind of important. That, you know, the community's talking about, they want to have good engagement, and they want to have communications, and they want to feel like they're involved. So I don't.
I guess I have a little bit of Councilor Florence. I guess my thought in on that is that's a very good point, and I think that it's something that very much at the beginning, it can't be every 5th Tuesday. I think that once we kind of get our stuff together and figure it out, once our plan is in place and once we've got all that stuff, then it can be. But maybe for this first year, it can't be. And so then in that regard, it does need a little more attention. It is my thought on that at this point. Councilor Florence?
I think you may want to, yeah, and when you talk about, just like some of the strategies and tools and framework, like I see this as even, like, so we've done our strategic planning, and, you know, we're sitting down at meetings, and then we're taking this back to the committee and talking about what tools we can use. Well, one of the tools we can use is putting in the agenda to, you know, make sure that we're checking the strategic boxes kind of thing. And so I think just even looking at like what kind of tools are we bringing for ourselves and what kind of tools are we bringing for the community, but just to really make sure that we're staying on that alignment. But to me, this is, all of these meetings kind of come like, I don't want to say after strategic planning, but like we need to have the strategic planning obviously, and then you make sure that we're staying on top of it, right? But I think that's the like, the bread and butter of it is going to be like the little things that we do, like those, you know, putting it on the agenda or hanging it in the wall or looking at, you know, even the strategies of engaging with the residents.
So it might need a little more attention initially then. I think what I'm hearing from you as well is that we have to give it a little bit of attention off the hop, and then as well, like what Mayor Martina was saying. It needs time and attention for right now. I guess that's kind of what I was feeling too, and I was just trying to gauge what everybody else was thinking, because I had this, I guess I have a similar vision as you guys, and I thought, maybe I'm not having the same thoughts.
Well, and I guess when we look at it from that perspective too, there's that communications component that is part of engagement, right? That, and so maybe when we're looking at like our communication plan for the month, it's something that kind of happens, maybe, I don't know where that happens either, right? Like that can happen off the side of the desk or behind the screen, but maybe it has to formally come, something has to happen, there's to be an agenda item on something where we can really kind of hash that out, what that's gonna look like for the month. And that also gives us time for, as individuals, to do your research into whatever it is you want to do for your videos or whatever. Also getting that to CAO How To so that you can look at it in a timely manner. So the more we talk about it, I do very much agree with what you're saying, is that this needs some care and attention at the very beginning, and hopefully transition into something that's a little more infrequent.
And we need somebody to come in and help provide us that guidance and go through the process with us so that we have a better understanding of what we're looking for, and that they can show us how we can get it, right? Yeah, because I'm so excited by this, and pieces, I feel like I can grab them and go, and then other ones is like, oh, that's like, how do I get a hold of how thinking about that and moving forward with that, eh?
And this might be a great one, like I know that we have our, the stuff from the facilitators, your proposals that have you received them all at this point, Dorothy?
I do have 4.
Okay, is that coming to our next council meeting
I
or?
was hoping to possibly put it on Tuesday, and I haven't
Okay.
looked at it in great detail myself, but I mean,
Okay.
basically put them forward, I mean, because in looking at the ones I got, I mean, there are different reasons as to why one is better than the other, and to say this is the best one to go with. And in terms of dollars, I haven't really looked at the dollars that much yet either, they just sort of come in. So probably present it to you, let you have a look at them, see what your thoughts are, and maybe we need further discussions with 1 or 2 of them to even decide possibly. But I do have some written information from some. So.
Okay. Yeah, that would be great if we could look at that, because, you know, maybe part of that is, it doesn't have to be necessarily done during this committee time, but it is a huge piece of this, right, as to how we do this. So I guess, right now, within the terms of reference, there isn't a meeting frequency schedule. If that's something that we want to look at adopting these. So that's something that we would need to kind of talk about, I guess, to look at that. Did you have something? You can try it. Go ahead.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I was just gonna say, you know, when you and I talked a little bit last week, I mean, this is the terms of reference that's here, but there also is, previous council had talked about developing a policy for, you know, strategic planning, which indicated you know, by December of the year following, you know, an election, that would be looked at the previous, you know, the old strategic plan, and then at least annually. So I mean, we were looking at, do we develop a policy which wouldn't necessarily have, you know, positions on the committee, terms, agenda, that type of stuff. It would have more of the purpose and maybe that sort of stuff in a policy as opposed to terms of reference. So there's that option to look at too, you know, pull out some of this stuff. And in some of the, you know, the policies or whatever, I mean, it could say, you know, will be looked at annually by council, will be looked at, you know, more frequently, quarterly, whatever the case is, or as required. And talk about some of the goals that you're talking here, purpose objectives, but not so much into the, you know, agenda minutes and whose appointments to it, because I'm thinking from the discussions that we've had, appointments to it is gonna be council.
Mhm.
You know, you're not talking 2 or 3 members like, say, policy bylaw or something like that. You're talking full council discussions whenever this is done. So,
So I just have a question for you then, like, why do we have a terms of reference for the finance committee? But it's kind of the same thing.
pretty small though. I think the finance committee one is pretty limited or whatever. I mean, I think, you know, the biggest terms of reference is obviously the rec and culture, which was developed, you know, when that was done. Some of the other ones are fairly basic. So I guess I'm looking, do we want the full board terms of reference, or do you want a policy that's, you know, a little lighter, has the purpose, has the goals, objectives of it, you know, when it's to be, you know, looked at in that sense, and that's it? Or do you want to go with the terms of reference and an actual committee as per name?
Thoughts? From my fellow people. Go ahead, Councilor Florence.
Yeah, I pick option 2. I think we should create a committee and have a name and really just see where this goes. I respect what you're saying, I appreciate that. I think that just, you know, with everything that we've talked about and everything you want to accomplish, it's a bold vision, I guess, and I think we need to be very intentional with our time.
I agree, and I'm just trying to hunt down what I posted on here. And that was the Alberta Municipalities training that they did on community engagement.
I have it, and it's still in there.
I know it's in there, but I don't have my mouse anymore. So I
Okay.
was trying to pull it up, because the one thing I felt, a lot of communities were really solid, and they had really great engagement strategies, and they had a clear process, and authentic engagement strategies, right? So that they could collect information from our municipality. And so they continued to do it all the time and have those relationship building exercises. And there was a number of them that were doing it, because that, a little while ago, sort of that came down from the Alberta government, right? And we just kind of went with absolutely just the most, really kind of the bare bones one, right? And so, and then there's a lot of work that went into what these other municipalities were doing. And this handbook was great, and the training was wonderful. But man, the takeaway on that was, what we're doing here is, it really is important work. It feels like it's kind of that ambiguous stuff, but it's important work, and other municipalities have gone through the process, and it does take time, and it takes intention. That's why I was trying to pull that book up. I need a mouse, damn it. Mouse. So I would like us to keep it as its own committee, and I would like us to give it the attention that it requires to really get off the ground. And once we get these processes and get these strategies in place and have an understanding, and kind of have it entrenched in some of our policy and an understanding, then we can pull it back a bit, and then we can just do check-ins. And even if it's just a biannual or quarterly, are we aligned? And someone introduced agendas that sort of had the strategic plan on them with checks to say, where does this fit within that, right? So we're coming into a time where we have a council who wants to move forward with great intention and deliberation. It says, we have these goals, we have this future plan, and let's move towards that. Let's not say, oh shit, well, hey, I think this would be, hey, let's try this. Let's go over and do this. And, you know, I like to think that we're putting the time in that's required for this. So I have a long speech, and I apologize. But you guys, I sat here lots of times, okay? I sat here many times where suddenly something popped up as a matter of absolute critical importance, and I was like, where did that come from? You know? So.
Councilor Evans.
Thank you. My thoughts on this are just, if we do have it as its own committee with the terms of reference and everything, then I think we're gonna devote the time to it, even if we use some of those committee of the whole time slots. Just having it specifically chunked out for this, I think makes a lot of sense versus kind of having it half in a meeting. And then, the meeting's kind of running over in one part and then you don't really give it the attention that it deserves. So I think if it's a matter of timing, I think we can play around with the timing, but I do think it's important to keep it down, so. Also, just a comment, we got about 5 minutes left.
Councilor Butchery, do you have any thoughts on committee versus policy?
Well, I don't know if the pattern really matters that much to me, as long as we do it.
Okay. Are you getting tired?
I feel like we're talking in circles.
Yeah,
But I do appreciate that everybody's what you're bringing forward, because I think, that for me, it's reinforcing that this is something that's very important to people. And in saying that, I we want to try a committee, let's go for a committee and see what we can do for that. And like you're saying, Councilor Florence, I think it's part of those bold steps forward, right? And really kind of claiming that this is where we're going. So in saying that, I will move that the Council of the Town of Culver's hereby approves the Community Engagement and Strategic Alignment Committee Terms of Reference as presented. We don't have a date in there, and so do we want to say monthly at this point? It will be monthly and we'll have to find the actual time.
Yeah.
Okay.
Just a couple comments. If
Yeah.
you're looking at section 8, where it's talking meetings, there are a couple question marks there,
Okay.
just that we'd have to look at. And then you have the finance section is TBD.
Mhm.
So it's just something to be mindful if we approve this as written.
I think it's pretty good with those question marks.
I mean, another thought would be to kind of clean it up a little bit in policy and bylaw review, and then just bring it back for a formal vote afterwards.
When do you guys meet next?
14th.
Okay.
So it would be before the next meeting, if we could do that.
I do prefer the next council one, but that's way too close to bring it back to council.
Yeah, next day.
No, I think it would be okay to say monthly meeting.
Okay. Yeah, so if we make that amendment to say monthly?
Yeah.
She'll be held monthly, and then I guess, I don't think we necessarily have to have the time and date in here yet, but maybe we could find a time and date that works for all. If that works?
Yeah.
So we'll just amend that to 8A.
Yeah.
To say that. Great. All right, any other questions?
I guess, do we just say as amended on there?
As amended, yeah. Thank you.
No, I think I thought it was great, I thought it was really well written.
I don't remember how it got like that, because it might have been a mix of Scott and I, but we don't really know.
Yeah.
That's okay. Any questions? Not call question, all in favor? That is carried, great, thank you. And now we're moving on to adjournment at 9:58. And would someone like to make a motion to adjourn?
I'll make that motion. Sorry, Scott. I was a fraction of a second faster than you.
Perfect. And we're done.
Hey,
Great, great meeting. RK, what are these?
They're your emergency passes, so that if there is an emergency and things are blocked off, or whatever, you flash that card.
I can do like-
if you're
Whoa, okay.
I wasn't ignoring the discussion, I was looking for grants.
I know, I was just making sure that you weren't dying there or something, dying inside.
Okay, Lindsay, did you see, you obviously say that's about the library thing, right? On the very bottom then? What is this one? On the very bottom.
Oh, is it about the library or something like that?
I think
it's about when you have to,
It's like word and get ready for library, like just.
No, I think it was like, oh,
So
I thought it was there. Lots of curvy, but I should have changed. Like these screws, these notes this morning.
I did find a grant though for before it started.
no, did you?
$5,000.
Yeah.
Nice.
About $5,000.
That would be kind of cool. Heather, you're gonna be at that meeting, the rec and culture meeting on Thursday?
I am this Thursday, right?
Yeah, I think that would be great, Jessica said you just had a grant for some really artists.
So I have.
Yeah, it's taken Lindsay, but I think.
Yeah.